You can feel it even before you can explain it. A heaviness in your chest after a conversation that looked normal on the surface but left you a little smaller. A joke that everyone laughs at and you force a smile, though it landed like a stone. A message left unread, a favor asked like an order. You walk away telling yourself it's nothing, that you're sensitive, that life is busy, that people forget. Yet a voice, quiet but unwavering, keeps repeating what your pride tries to swallow. They don't respect you the way you deserve to be respected. And that hurts, not because you're fragile, but because something in you knows your worth. This is not a video about blaming them. It is a conversation about remembering you. The Stoics taught that the world reflects our standards, not our wishes. You don't get what you announce, you get what you tolerate. If you want a new chapter in how people treat you, it begins where all real revolutions begin, with the discipline of your own mind and the boundaries you're brave enough to hold. So, let's talk plainly. There are signs people don't respect you. They've been there, subtle at first, then obvious, then normalized, and finally invisible. Today, we're going to bring them back to the light. Not to rage, not to seek revenge, but to recover your posture. Respect is not demanded with noise. It's cultivated with clarity. I'm going to show you the signs and the remedies, and you will feel something shift while you listen. Not because I'm saying it, but because a stronger part of you recognizes the truth and is ready to step forward. Think of this as a training session for your inner citadel. By the end, you will not just have language for what's been bothering you, you will have a strategy to change it. You will move differently. You will speak less and mean more. You will stop arguing for your limitations and begin living by your principles. You will learn the art the Stoics mastered, to be firm without fury, gracious without being a doormat, kind without being used. Keep listening, not for drama, but for direction. This is how you rebuild your respect, one decision at a time. Let us begin with the first sign, the way a river begins with a spring so modest you could miss it. People speak over you as if your words were background noise. You've seen it happen. You start a sentence and someone lands on top of it, hijacking the air between you. Or you make a point and another voice repeats it a little louder, a little faster, and suddenly the room attributes it to them. It's tempting to think the solution is to push your volume to match theirs, to bark your way into the conversation. But noise is not influence, and shouting is not respect. The Stoic approach is simpler and more powerful. First, discipline your posture. When you speak, you must believe your words are worth the space they occupy. Sit or stand tall, feet planted, chin neutral, breath deep. Speak in short, clear sentences. People don't interrupt clarity, they interrupt vagueness. Second, own your start and your stop. Begin with a preface. I have 2 points, and I'll be brief. And the room unconsciously braces to listen for 2 points. If someone interrupts, do not argue, do not sigh, do not shrink. Pause, turn your head calmly and say, I wasn't finished. I'll be brief, then continue. The strength is in the steadiness. Third, use the name and frame technique. John, hold that thought. Let me complete this idea, and I'll circle back to you. You are not snatching power, you are creating order. If the pattern persists, address it once in private. When I'm interrupted, I feel my ideas aren't considered. I'm going to complete my points going forward. I expect that space. No anger, only expectation. Respect grows in the soil of consistent boundaries. And if, over time, people still trample your words, recognize this. The The room is telling you it does not value your contribution. The Stoic response is not to sulk. It is to either change rooms or change your role within it. Never beg for the floor. Master your presence and claim it. Then there is the second sign, as corrosive as water leaking under a foundation. Their time matters, and yours does not. They are late. They cancel last minute. They forget. They ask for one more quick favor that costs you an hour. This is not a scheduling issue. This is a standards issue. Time is life in motion, and those who waste your time are rehearsing how to waste your life. The fix is both internal and visible. Internally, you must stop equating availability with virtue. Busyness is not holiness. Your calendar is a boundary map. Fill it with what matters to you. Deep work, fitness, rest, relationships, and then defend it. Visibly tighten your agreements. Confirm times in writing, shorten windows, set end points. Let's do 2 o'clock to 2:20. If they arrive at 2:10, the meeting ends at 2:20. Not out of spite, out of principle. If they cancel twice, move them to email or ask them to propose 3 concrete slots. When someone repeatedly disrespects your time, reduce access, not hope. You teach people how to meet you by how you handle their lateness. The first time, assume good intent. The second, name the pattern. We've rescheduled twice. Let's pencil a time you're confident you can make. The third, shift the medium or decline politely. At the moment, I can't commit to more changes. Send details and I'll respond asynchronously. Stoic diplomacy is clean and firm. You do not need to explain endlessly. You need to honor your clock. Ask yourself the question Marcus Aurelius posed in other words. If you had only this hour to live, would you spend it like this? If not, why let someone else decide for you? The third sign burrows into your peace like sand in a shoe. People push past your no. You set a boundary. No work calls after 8. No gossip about family. No borrowing money. And they smile, nod, and do it anyway. They test you the way a child pushes a fence to see if it holds. Your job is not to justify the fence. It is to fortify it. Begin by understanding that a boundary unenforced is a preference, not a boundary. The Stoic fix is a 3-step practice. First, state your limit plainly, without a story and without a tremor. I don't take calls after 8. No because, no apology. Second, enforce with a consequence that is proportional and immediate. If they call, silence the phone. If they press in person, step back and say, "We can continue tomorrow." If they borrow and delay repayment, stop lending. Third, maintain warmth while holding the line. People confuse boundaries with coldness, but they are actually the conditions for closeness. I care about our relationship, and part of that is me keeping this boundary. You will discover that many transgressions end not with a fight, but with a sigh, because people sense that your limit is real. What if they accuse you of changing? Let them. You are changing, from a version of yourself that negotiated against your own well-being to a version that protects it. Remember Epictetus. How long will you delay before you demand the best for yourself? Your no is the needle that stitches your respect back together. Say it with kindness. Keep it when it's tested. Let repetition teach those who couldn't hear it the first time. The fourth sign is quiet and poisonous. They make you the punchline and call it just a joke. Sarcasm that cuts, nicknames that diminish, stories that expose your private moments for a laugh. You laugh along to keep the peace, but inside you feel a small betrayal. The fix is a blend of language and presence. Language first. You need a sentence you can deliver calmly every time the line is crossed. I don't find that funny. Then silence. No lecture, no sermon. If the joker stumbles, you've done enough. But if they push, relax, it's a joke. You respond, steady. I'm relaxed. I don't find that funny. You are not fighting, you are teaching. Presence second. Remove the reward, disengage, change the subject, end the call, leave the table early. The social economy runs on attention. Withdrawing yours is a currency. In private, follow up once if the person matters to you. When you joke about that, I feel disrespected. Don't do it again. If it happens again, you reorder the relationship. Less access, less intimacy, less of your life shared. The Stoic does not scream at the wind. The Stoic closes the window. This is not cruelty, it is care for your dignity. And care is contagious. Often, one person raising the standard cleans the atmosphere for everyone. But be ready for the cost. Some dynamics only survive when you're small. When you grow, the fragile will call you sensitive because your strength exposes their laziness. Let them talk. You are not their editor. You are the guardian of your own respect. The fifth sign seems flattering at first. They rely on you for everything and mean it. You become the unpaid therapist, the taxi, the planner, the fixer. Gratitude fades into expectation. Suddenly, can you help? Sounds like you owe me. Stoicism is not selfishness. It is the practice of choosing what is within your control and refusing to be controlled by what is not. The fix begins with inventory. Make a list, mentally or on paper, of the ways you're overextending. Now ask, which of these are aligned with who I want to be, and which are attempts to buy closeness with service? You should always help where your values lead and your capacity allows. But if your help is a disguise for fear, fear of being unliked, fear of being alone, your kindness is a leash around your own neck. Free yourself. Replace open-ended obligations with finite offers. I can help for 20 minutes. I can do Monday, not the whole week. I'll send you 3 resources, then you've got it. When someone tries to outsource their life to you, hand it back with dignity. I believe you can handle this. Here's my one piece of advice. Expect some friction. People accustomed to a buffet don't celebrate when you close the kitchen, but let them be uncomfortable. You are not withdrawing love. You are offering a different, stronger love. The love that respects both of you. The Stoic knows the difference between being of service and being used. One grows you, the other drains you. Choose growth. The sixth sign hides inside silence. They do not consult you on decisions that affect both of you. A partner books a trip and informs you later. A team changes a plan you built and tells you after the fact. A friend invites you to a group event by tagging you in a post. The message beneath the logistics is simple. Your voice is optional. The fix is to move your voice from optional to essential by how you show up and how you follow up. Show up prepared and clear. When decisions are on the horizon, volunteer a concise perspective early. Before we finalize the launch, here are the 2 constraints that matter. Or, before you book, here's my one condition. Your clarity earns a seat. Then, if you're bypassed, follow up without drama, with consequence. This was decided without my input. Going forward, I'll step back from ownership, or I can't commit to a plan I didn't consent to. Let's revisit after we align. When a pattern repeats, name it with specifics. In March, in June, and now, decisions were made without me. That doesn't work. Include me before decisions, or I'll remove myself after them. The power is in consistency and memory. Keep a short ledger. Your mind will want to rationalize. The Stoic does not cling to positions where their agency is repeatedly denied. You are not fragile for asking to be asked. You are responsible. Respect is not a favor. It is a precondition. The seventh sign is a slow erosion. They default to criticism over gratitude. Every offering is inspected for flaws. You give 90%. They circle the 10% you couldn't finish. Some personalities call this high standards. It may also be contempt. Stoicism trains you to separate signal from noise, improvement from disrespect. The fix starts with your inner dialogue. If their voice sounds suspiciously like your own harsh inner critic, you have two jobs: soften your self-talk and harden your outer boundaries. Thank yourself for what you did right. Record your progress, however small. Then bring that self-respect into the conversation. When criticism comes, request calibration. What worked? Make them name it. People who can't name what's good are not trying to build. They're trying to dominate. If the feedback is fair, receive it with grace and implement what's useful. If it's vague or personal, ask for specifics, and if they can't provide them, close the loop. Until feedback is specific, I won't act on it. You're not being defensive, you're being precise. And when the dynamic remains lopsided, when praise never arrives, and nitpicking is the house language, rebalance or leave. The Stoic does not beg for crumbs of approval when there is a bakery of self-respect to build. Raise your own standard of gratitude first. Thank others publicly. Appreciate effort. You will either become the gravitational center for better behavior, or you will see who refuses to orbit. Both outcomes clarify your life. The eighth sign is disguised as intimacy. They violate your privacy and then justify it. They read your messages, borrow your things, share confidences that weren't theirs to share. Every time you let it slide, your home, inner and outer, feels less like yours. The fix is a decisive reclamation. Start by defining your sanctuaries, your phone, your journal, your room, your bag. Then make them literally harder to breach, locks, passwords, places, and symbolically clearer. I don't share this, said calmly and often. If someone violates your boundary, don't debate their reasons. Address the act. You went through my phone. That is not acceptable. This is the last conversation before consequences. Then enforce them. Move valuables. Change access. Reduce overlap. The Stoic does not shout about offense. The Stoic builds one and watches who respects it. And if the violator is a partner or close family member, seek one serious conversation with structure. State the incident. State your principle. State the consequence of a repeat. Then keep your word. Respect is not recovered by pleading. It is restored by consistent action aligned with your values. You are not paranoid for locking your door. You are not cold for guarding your peace. You are responsible. The ninth sign shows up on your screen. They ignore your messages unless they want something. When they need you, they're instant. When you need them, they're ancient. We've normalized this as busy, but patterns are telling. The Stoic fix has two prongs. First, manage your own digital respect. Stop writing essays to people who reply with emojis. Match energy, not fantasy. Shorten your asks, set clear response windows, And if something is urgent, say so. Need answer by 5. If it isn't, release it from your mind. The most stoic notification is the one you never check because you've already returned to your work. Second, diversify your circle. When your entire need for connection is tethered to a small set of inconsistent responders, you'll keep tolerating disrespect, hoping for a different result. Grow broader roots, mentors, peers, communities. Quantity doesn't replace quality, but it exposes you to more chances at it. If someone repeatedly shows you your low priority, believe them and recalibrate. You are not a ghost in your own life. Your attention is a limited resource. Invest it where it compounds. And if you've been the one delaying replies, fix the pattern in yourself first. Reply when you say you will, decline quickly when you must, and never leave people in limbo. Respect is a mirror. You can't receive what you refuse to give. The 10th sign is a currency imbalance. Reciprocity is absent. You drive across town, they won't cross the street. You check on them, they forget you exist when you're quiet. You give thoughtful gifts, they give excuses. There's a mathematics of care we pretend doesn't exist. It does. The fix is not to keep a petty score, it is to keep a truthful ledger. For 1 month, observe without editing. Ask yourself, is this relationship additive, balanced, or extractive? If it's extractive, stop pouring. Not to punish, to measure. Reduce the favors, the check-ins, the gifts, and watch what remains. If the person asks what's wrong, tell the truth kindly. I realized I've been overgiving. I value our relationship and I want it to be more balanced. Here's what that looks like. Some will meet you there. Some will evaporate because your giving was the only fuel. Bless their departure. It frees you to invest in people who breathe with you instead of taking your breath. The Stoic injunction is ancient and evergreen. Prefer quality to quantity, virtue to flattery, mutual respect to emotional rent-seeking. The people who will help you carry your life are not won with grand gestures. They are revealed as soon as you stop carrying theirs for them. The 11th sign is the subtlest and the most devastating. You don't respect you, and the world is simply agreeing. You tolerate your own broken promises, sleep later, skip the workout, gossip when you swore you wouldn't, take on what you said you'd decline. You hold others to a standard you won't carry alone. The Stoics would tell you this is the root. Fix this, and the other signs fade or fall in line. The remedy is a vow, not to me, not to them, but to yourself. Keep one promise a day that costs you something. Wake up at the time you said. Do the workout whether you feel like it or not. Speak the truth in the moment it trembles on your tongue. Decline the invitation that violates your priorities. Leave on time when you told yourself you would. The identity that emerges from repeated self-respect becomes a lighthouse other people calibrate to. Your no gets sharper because it's not new to you. Your words land because you stand in them. Your presence changes before your circumstances do. And here's the paradox. When you stop living to be respected by others and start living to be respected by your own conscience, others usually follow. Those who don't cannot stand the brightness and step back. This isn't tragedy, it's pruning. What remains grows stronger. Do not imagine that change requires a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it does. More often it requires a month of quiet decisions where you choose principle over comfort. You communicate earlier, you schedule tighter, you speak slower, you enforce once and move on. You stop writing novels to people who skim your sentences. You leave a room where your silence is the only thing that keeps the peace. You stop arguing about your worth and start behaving like it. The Stoics didn't aspire to be liked. They aspired to be free. To be free is to choose your inputs, what you watch, whom you trust, what you do when nobody claps. And it's to accept your outputs, your results, without the disguise of excuses. If people don't respect you today, do not waste a minute counting the injustices. Count your leverage. Respect is not a trophy they'll hand you if you beg well enough. Respect is your posture, how you sit in your life, how you guard your time, how you keep your word, how you correct gently, how you leave without slamming the door. I want to leave you with images you can carry. Picture yourself at a table. Each sign we named is a hand that reaches for the plate in front of you. You can spend the evening slapping hands away, angry, reactive, or you can lift your plate and put it in front of you, set your fork, and eat your meal. Boundaries are not walls, they're placements. Speak once, act twice. Picture your day as a series of gates. People will test them. Some will push, some will walk around, a few will knock. Your job is to decide which gates open and for whom. You don't need to post guards with spears. You need to oil the hinges of your principles so they swing smoothly when the right person arrives and stay shut when the wrong person shouts. Picture your future self, 6 months from now, walking into a room you now enter curled inward. In that future, you respect your own time. You finish your sentences. You laugh at jokes that don't cut, and you get up from tables where they do. People look at you and, before they name it, feel it. This is someone who governs themselves. The world will still try you, but your center will hold. And if you still doubt whether this can change, let me remind you of a truth that saves careers, marriages, friendships, and the relationship you have with yourself. Most disrespect persists not because people are monsters, but because we have never taught them how to treat us. Today you begin, not with a speech, but with a standard, not with rage, but with repetition. When they interrupt, you'll finish. When they're late, you'll end on time. When they push your no, you'll hold it and smile. When they joke at your expense, you'll let the silence do the work. When they use you, you'll limit your help and expand your love toward yourself. When they decide without you, you'll step back from ownership. When criticism drowns gratitude, you'll ask for specifics and walk away from contempt. When privacy is violated, you'll rebuild the lock and protect your home. When messages go unanswered, you'll invest in people who answer. When reciprocity is absent, you'll rebalance or release. And when the hardest moment arrives, the mirror moment, you'll keep a promise to yourself that no one can see, knowing that's where respect is born. The Stoics did not chase the world's opinion because they trained for something steadier, character. You can do the same. Start with one sign. Pick the one that stings most. Fix it quietly. Then pick the next. Watch the atmosphere of your life change the way the air changes after a storm, charged, clear, with the horizon visible again. Will people talk? Of course. They'll say you're different. Say thank you. You worked for different. You became someone your future can rely on. And when you sit down at the end of the day and the room is finally quiet, you'll hear a sound you've been missing. The sound of your own respect returning to you, like a bird that always knew the way home. There's a moment, maybe you've already felt it begin, when the noise of the world dims and all that remains is you, your breath, and the quiet weight of your own company. In our last conversation, we rebuilt respect from the inside out. We learned that standards teach the world how to treat you. But there's a deeper layer beneath those standards, the underground forge where they're heated, hammered, and hardened. That forge is solitude. People fear it because they've mistaken applause for proof, motion for meaning, company for connection. Yet the Stoics knew the opposite. The person who can stand still in an empty room and not collapse is the one who can stand strong in any crowd. If you stay with me, I'll take you into that room, not to punish you with silence, but to introduce you to the power that grows there. These next minutes will not merely explain solitude. They will reframe it until it becomes your ally, your training ground, your quiet teacher. By the end, you will not feel lonely in your own presence. You will feel recruited by it. You will walk away with a steadier mind, a cleaner compass, and a practice you can use tonight. This is not a sermon for hermits. It is a strategy for leaders. Let's begin where all honest journeys begin, with a mirror you can't escape and a truth you can't outsource. The first brutal reason being alone makes you stronger is that when you are alone, there is no one left to lie to but yourself. In company, we learn to camouflage. We speak in agreeable tones. We perform competence. We outsource our uncertainty to the group. We become experts at distracting ourselves with tasks, with talk, with the next notification that absolves us from meeting our own gaze. Solitude removes those props. You sit in a room, the phone on airplane mode, and suddenly the unpaid debts of your promises knock. Did you do what you said you would do? Did you become who you said you would become? This is uncomfortable because it is clean. It is the discomfort of antiseptic on a wound. It stings, but the sting is healing. The Stoic move is not to drown the sting with new noise. It is to ask better questions. What am I afraid to admit? What have I postponed so long I've convinced myself it isn't necessary? What am I rehearsing that is shrinking me? Alone, your own inconsistency becomes visible. Alone, your own potential becomes undeniable. The same silence that exposes you also empowers you, because once the lie is named, its leverage dissolves. You stop negotiating with your procrastination and start litigating it. Decisions you've avoided because they might upset others become decisions you cannot avoid because they upset your conscience. You switch from defending old stories to drafting new standards. This is why being alone is a gym for integrity. There are no spotters, no mirrors angled to flatter, only form, only reps, only truth. When you leave that room, you speak fewer words and mean all of them. Your yes becomes a contract. Your number becomes a gate, and people feel it, the way they feel a firm handshake compared to a limp one. Solitude didn't make you harsh, it made you honest. It taught you to stop renting your identity to other people's expectations and start owning it outright. From that honesty flows the second brutal reason. Solitude concentrates your attention until it becomes a blade. The world trains you to be scattered, tabs open, conversations overlapping, dopamine dripping like a leaky faucet. But nothing big grows in a mind that is constantly interrupted. In loneliness, we grasp for stimulation to dilute the ache. In solitude, we do the opposite. We remove stimulation to distill the signal. Picture yourself at a wooden desk with a single task in front of you. No soundtrack, no messages blinking like emergency lights, just you and the work. At first, your mind thrashes like a fish pulled from the stream of novelty. It begs for rescue. Check this, scroll that, stand up, wander. Stay. Breathe. The thrashing calms. A different rhythm appears. You notice your thoughts lengthen, like a camera lens focusing from blur to crisp lines. You enter the kind of concentration that athletes call the zone and philosophers call contemplation. Minutes pile into an hour, and what you move in that hour could have taken a week of fragmented attention. The Stoics weren't allergic to the world, they were committed to what was essential. Solitude teaches you to choose your inputs with intention. One book, not 10 summaries. One deep conversation with a page, not 30 skims of headlines. One problem fully wrestled, not 10 poked and abandoned. It is not asceticism for its own sake. It is efficiency. You become the person who finishes things because you gave them the uninterrupted oxygen to burn. This transforms your career and your inner life. In a distracted culture, the rare superpower is sustained focus. When you can give 80 minutes of single-task effort, you outpace people giving 8 scattered hours. Solitude is not an absence, it's an amplifier. It takes the quiet intention inside you and turns up the volume until it drowns out your excuses. And when you return to noise, you carry a sharpened mind that cuts through it. Naturally, attention invites sovereignty, which leads to the third reason. Time alone is where you reclaim your boundaries and remember that your life is yours to govern. In crowds, we drift. We agree to plans we didn't choose. We pick up obligations like lint. We consent to rhythms that do not belong to us. You know the feeling. It's Thursday night, and you're 3 commitments deep into a week you never designed. Solitude pauses the conveyor belt. You step off. You look at the calendar not as a victim, but as an architect. What, specifically, belongs in your days if your days are to belong to you? Solitude gives you the courage to put it there and the backbone to remove what doesn't fit. This is where you write the policy manual for your own peace. The hours you are available and the hours you are not, the kind of favors you will give and the ones you will no longer subsidize with your future fatigue, the rituals that anchor you each morning and evening, the conditions under which you say yes, the reflexes by which you protect your no. The beauty of doing this alone is that you cannot be manipulated mid-sentence by someone else's disappointment. You decide in the presence of your principles rather than the pressure of their reactions. Then you bring those decisions back into the world and enforce them with calm repetition. People may call you changed. They're right. You have shifted from drifting to driving. The Stoic phrase, command of oneself, stops being literature and starts being logistics. Your phone sleeps outside your bedroom. Your work ends when you said it would. Your weekends are not orphanages for everyone else's emergencies. Paradoxically, boundaries make you more generous because you give from a full cup instead of a leaking one. Solitude is not a retreat from responsibility. It is the meeting where responsibility gets assigned wisely. Sovereignty sets the stage for the fourth reason, the one that hurts and heals at the same time. Solitude turns pain into fuel instead of noise. When life breaks something, your heart, your plan, your sense of control, company can anesthetize. Friends mean well. They distract you. They advise you. They help you make the pain not now. There is a place for that mercy. But there is also a moment when you must invite the pain to speak. Alone, without the buffering chorus, you can hear what it wants from you. Sit, breathe, let the ache have words. What boundary did I ignore that led me here? What illusion did I marry? What lesson is trying to recruit me? This is not self-blame. It is self-respect. It is the discipline of harvest. If life insists on sending you a storm, collect the water. The Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, rehearsing difficulties, not to suffer twice, but to build a mind that doesn't shatter when impact arrives. Solitude is the dojo where you run those drills. You write the letter you won't send to the person who wronged you, not to keep the grudge alive, but to release it without performance. You cry hard enough to rinse the residue of self-pity, and then you stand up with a strategy. Pain turns from a fog into a map. Patterns emerge, the kind of people you must stop inviting into your life, the compromises you can never make again, the red flags you will not repaint. Alone, you metabolize the sorrow into standards. And that transformation, pain to principle, is how resilience is born, not by pretending you're fine, not by outsourcing your healing to the next distraction, but by letting solitude turn raw emotion into resolved intention. When you re-enter the world from that process, you are quieter and stronger. You need fewer words to set the record straight, because the record is already straight inside you. With pain transmuted, clarity becomes possible. And that brings us to the fifth reason. Solitude shows you your values without the distortion of other people's desires. There is a question that ruins confusion when you are brave enough to ask it. What do I admire so much that I would be willing to sacrifice for it? You can't answer that in a crowded room. You answer it in the wilderness of your own attention, where you can hear your life call you by your actual name. Maybe you discover that you value craftsmanship over speed, depth over reach, truth over approval, loyalty over entertainment, health over convenience, love over spectacle. These are not bumper stickers, they are coordinates. And when you fix them, decisions that used to paralyze you become obvious. Should you take the job that pays more but sells your evenings to the highest bidder? Look at the coordinates. Should you date the person who loves the idea of you but cannot love your reality? Check the map. Should you move cities, change majors, say yes to the project, say no to the party? Consult the compass you built alone. The Stoics weren't obsessed with rules, they were devoted to virtues. That devotion simplified life. Solitude is where you audition your values until only the honest ones remain. Then you bake them into your routines. A non-negotiable hour of reading before you touch the world. A weekly long walk without headphones. A quarterly retreat where you silence the algorithms and upgrade your soul's operating system. This is not romantic. It is ruthlessly practical. A person with values can move through chaos like a ship with a keel. The wind can scream and the waves can lift, but the vessel does not flip. You become legible to yourself. The reward is not only inner peace, it is outer momentum. People begin to trust your decisions because you are not making them to impress anyone. You are obeying a compass they can sense even if they can't see it. Clarity wants a craft, and that ushers in the sixth reason. Solitude is the workshop where skill becomes mastery. Talent is noisy, mastery is quiet. The hours that grow it are invisible. While others debate, you practice. While others post, you refine. While others complain they don't have opportunities, you are too busy becoming an opportunity. Put yourself in a room with the tools of your craft: keyboard, brush, barbell, camera, code, instrument, and commit to deliberate practice, specific drills, measurable improvements, feedback loops that sting and instruct. The point is not to obsess over perfection, it is to accumulate competence until it compounds into confidence. The world will notice in time. It cannot resist excellence. But the applause is a side effect, not the fuel. What fuels you is the rhythm of getting better when no one is keeping score. The Stoics would have recognized this as living according to nature. You do the appropriate action for your role repeatedly until the action becomes part of you. You become the writer who writes even when inspiration is sulking, the athlete who trains even when motivation is absent, the engineer who solves problems no one else has the patience to think through. Alone, you are free from performative urgency. You can slow down to speed up, unlearn bad habits without an audience, and invent your own drills. Over months, a subtle transformation occurs. Your self-respect stops relying on outcomes and starts resting on effort. You celebrate streaks, days practiced, pages produced, sessions completed, because they reveal your character. And character, unlike luck, is transferable across seasons. When life shifts, your mastery travels with you, because it wasn't borrowed from anyone's approval. It was built in solitude and paid for in attention. Mastery steadies your identity, which prepares you for the seventh reason. Solitude detoxes you from approval addiction and makes you socially invincible. Most people bend their lives around the weather of other people's moods. They broadcast their day like a fishing line thrown into the water, waiting for a tug of validation to tell them they exist. This is not love, it is dependency. Alone, you delete the app you've installed in your head that constantly checks whether you're trending. You learn the ancient art of sufficiency, to do what is right because it is right, not because it is applauded. This is not defiance, it is freedom. You become immune to cheap praise because you no longer need it, and you become immune to cheap criticism because it no longer defines you. The Stoics called this indifference to externals, not a cold dismissal of people, but a warm refusal to let other people's reactions become your tyrant. Practically, this looks like writing the post you believe in and being at peace if it gets 3 likes, saying the hard truth in the meeting and sleeping well even if it's unpopular, wearing what aligns with your taste and values rather than what wins temporary approval. The paradox is that when you stop trying to be acceptable, you become magnetic. People can feel that your spine is not for sale. They trust you to tell the truth because you have trained yourself to live without the sugar rush of consensus. This doesn't make you a hermit or a provocateur. It makes you a person who can collaborate without collapsing. You can walk into rooms without shrinking or swelling. You arrive as yourself. And because you are not auditioning for affection, you can give genuine affection, free of need, full of respect. The approval detox you earn in solitude becomes social grace in public. From invincibility flows a gentler power. The 8th reason. Solitude increases your capacity for real connection by ending your desperation for counterfeit versions of it. Many people enter relationships as hungry ghosts. They want the other person to feed an emptiness they have never dared to face. That hunger makes them clingy, jealous, reactive, easy to manipulate, easy to exhaust. When you learn to be well in your own company, your relationships stop carrying the weight of your emotional survival. You don't need a partner to be your parent or a friend to be your therapist or a team to be your identity. You come with your own oxygen. That changes the entire dynamic. You can listen without planning your defense. You can give without keeping a ledger. You can receive without suspicion. You can leave when dignity requires it, without turning the room into a courtroom. The Stoics prized friendship, marriage, community, not as cures for emptiness, but as arenas for virtue. Solitude equips you to enter those arenas prepared. You have practiced your boundaries in quiet, so you can hold them gently in conversation. You have discovered your values alone, so you can align with people who share them and bless those who don't. You can be fully present because you're not trying to extract from the moment more than the moment can give. Counterintuitively, the person who can be alone is the easiest to love. They don't suffocate the people they care about. They don't punish others for failing to heal wounds they didn't cause. They bring steadiness, not storms. And if you've ever wondered why certain people seem to attract healthy relationships repeatedly, look closely. Behind the socials and smiles is a practiced comfort with solitude. They aren't hiding from connection, they are prepared for it. All of this culminates in the ninth and most comprehensive reason. Solitude makes you anti-fragile. It teaches you how to grow stronger from stress instead of merely surviving it. Life will not ask your permission to be difficult. Markets shift, bodies age, loved ones leave, plans fail, traffic exists, and weather ignores your feelings. The person who needs perfect conditions to function is at the mercy of every forecast. The person who has trained in solitude already owns a set of inner tools, the ability to manufacture focus when the world is noisy, to create meaning when the script changes, to reset when the day goes sideways, to find the next right action when fear demands spectacle. Alone, you learn to travel light, fewer possessions, simpler routines, a portable set of rituals that fit in any city and any season. Alone, you rehearse adversity, not to attract it, but to disarm it. Cold showers that teach you to breathe, hard workouts that teach you to stay, disciplined budgets that teach you to choose, digital Sabbaths that teach you to be. Alone, you also practice joy without dependency, music for the sake of music, walks for the sake of walking, tea for the sake of warmth. This is not survivalism, it is spiritual athleticism. The Stoics believed the good life was under your control to the precise extent that your character was under your control. Solitude is where you train that character until it carries you through storms without losing your shape. When the unexpected hits, you will still hurt, still grieve, still need others. This isn't invulnerability cosplay. But the core of you will not crack. You'll have a practiced sequence, feel fully, think clearly, act cleanly. That sequence is learned alone in 1,000 quiet repetitions. Then one day, something hard happens and you watch your training appear like muscle memory. You don't panic, you proceed. Now, let's stitch these reasons together into a practice you can own. Start where you are, with the room you have, the minutes you can claim, the version of you that is tired of outsourcing your strength to noise. Choose a daily solitude session, 15 minutes if that's all you can win at first. No phone, no soundtrack beyond your breathing. Sit, stand or walk, but be with yourself on purpose. Ask 3 questions and write what answers come, without editing. What truth am I avoiding? What matters enough to schedule? What will I do in the next hour that my future self will thank me for? Then do one small thing. Keep one small promise. Return tomorrow. Add 5 minutes next week. Expand the practice into weekly long blocks for deep work, into monthly mini retreats where you plan the quarter, into quarterly days where you reset your systems. Build a cadence of being alone that nourishes rather than punishes you. People will notice, first the calm, then the competence, then the boundaries, then the strange absence of desperation. Some will test the new you. That's natural. Don't argue. Demonstrate. Keep the practice and let the practice keep you. Before we close, I want to speak to the fear under all of this. What if being alone reveals that I am not enough? That is precisely why you must begin. Because what solitude actually reveals is that you have always been more than you thought and less than you pretended. It humbles and crowns you at the same time. It shows you where to grow and gives you the power to grow there. No audience can give you that. Only the quiet can. And when the quiet has done its work, You won't need to broadcast your strength. It will leak from your posture, your choices, your schedule, your kindness, your refusals. People will tell you you've changed. Smile. You were supposed to. So take this as your invitation and your instruction. Embrace the empty room not as a punishment, but as a privilege. Use it to tell yourself the truth until your life fits it. Use it to cut your attention into a blade and craft work you're proud of. Use it to write the policies that protect your energy. Use it to convert pain into principle. Use it to choose values over pressure, mastery over noise, freedom over applause, connection over dependence. Use it to become unfazed by weather you cannot control. Then bring that person, the one trained in silence, back into the world. Lead without clinging. Love without begging. Build without boasting. And when the day is done, when you switch off the last light and the house is quiet, you will not be afraid of the sound of your own breath. You will hear it for what it is, a metronome of steady strength, counting out the life you chose on purpose. You and I left our last conversation in a quiet room. We learned that solitude is not a punishment, it is preparation. You discovered that when you are alone, you stop performing and start becoming. Now take that same insight and carry it into a topic most people treat with noise, urgency, and fear. Everyone talks about relationships as if they were oxygen and singleness as if it were a drought. But the men and women who move through life with the kind of steadiness you can feel, those who build legacies, who lead with a clean spine, who love without clinging, have learned a different rhythm. Many of them are single by choice, not by accident. Not because they hate love, but because they refuse to dilute it. They are not escaping intimacy. They are protecting the conditions that make true intimacy possible. If the last message taught you how to stand alone, this one will teach you why standing alone, at least for a season, sometimes longer, is one of the smartest, most stoic decisions you can make. Stay with me. This is not a manifesto against relationships. It is a blueprint for a wiser life, one that refuses to trade freedom for frenzy, standards for company, or clarity for a calendar milestone. By the end, you won't fear being single. You will understand it as a disciplined choice, a strategic interval, a sanctuary where you become someone worthy of the love you want, and able to walk away from the love that wounds. The first reason smart people choose to stay single is that they want their life to be governed, not negotiated. When you are not clear on your values, a relationship becomes an arena where two confusions wrestle and call it romance. The Stoics knew that without an inner constitution, external contracts become cages. Single by choice means single by principle. It is the decision to establish the policy manual of your life before you invite someone else to co-author it. In practice, that looks like designing your days without apology. The hour you read in the morning, because your mind is a garden, not a landfill. The time you train, because strength is not an accessory. The window you create for deep work, because your craft is your contribution. The budget you keep, because debt is not a love language. When you are single, you can architect these structures without the subtle pressure of accommodation. You discover whether your rituals are real or performative, whether your ambitions are yours or borrowed, whether your spirituality is a practice or a pose. Then, and this is the key, you bring that finished draft into any future relationship. You arrive as an adult with operating principles, not a child asking to be parented. The beauty of this is not rigidity, it is legibility. People can see you. They learn the edges of your life quickly, the way you learn a well-drawn map quickly. Boundaries can be respected because they exist. If you skip this season and jump into a partnership asking it to give you what only self-governance can, you will resent the very person you claim to love. Single by choice is the Stoic apprenticeship in self-rule. Govern your life first, so that love, when it arrives, becomes a voluntary alliance of sovereigns, not a merger of emergencies. Naturally, once governance replaces guesswork, the second reason appears. Choosing to stay single is how smart people protect their standards from loneliness. Loneliness is real. It visits the disciplined and the distracted alike. But loneliness is a poor matchmaker. It tells you today's emptiness is tomorrow's permanence, then shoves you toward anyone who can silence the ache. Standards die in that rush. You accept half-truths and call it chemistry. You rebrand red flags as quirks. You trade your peace for a hand to hold. The Stoic answer is neither denial nor despair. It is delay with dignity. Single by choice means you let the hunger exist without feeding it garbage. You let a Friday night be quiet without texting the person who keeps you small. You let the bed feel big without inviting a body that does not carry integrity. This is not punishment, it is purification. Every time you ride out the ache, you teach your nervous system that discomfort will not kill you, that solitude is survivable, that you can hold your line. And then a strange thing happens. The loneliness loses its vote. It can speak, but it cannot legislate. You begin to choose people from your values, not your panic. You listen to your future self instead of your craving. Will I respect this decision in 6 months? Becomes louder than, will this relieve me in 6 minutes? Standards protected by solitude become standards that protect you in relationship. You will still feel desire, still feel the magnetism of attention, still feel the urge to erase the quiet with the nearest noise, but you will not betray yourself to do it. That power is worth more than any temporary relief. It is how you become a person love can trust. From the protection of standards grows a third reason. Single by choice creates the bandwidth to master your craft, and mastery changes everything. There is a level of focus that is nearly impossible when your schedule must constantly flex around another's needs, rhythms, and storms. That focus is where excellence is born. Smart people are not antisocial. They are pro-concentration. They understand that the years you give to mastery pay dividends for decades. The hour before dawn when you write, the weekend you spend shipping a product instead of performing busyness, the season you disappear from gossip to appear in competence, these are not selfish withdrawals, they are investments. The Stoics prized appropriate action. Do what your role requires with excellence. If your current role is builder, student, artist, founder, athlete, apprentice, your appropriate action is immersion. Single by choice is the shield that protects immersion. Without the ambient obligation of constant availability, you can stack uninterrupted sessions. You can say no without causing relational tremors. You can be strategically boring. Over time, this transforms your options. Mastery increases your income, your confidence, your network, your ability to walk away from mediocrity in every domain, including dating. People will tell you that you can have it all at the same time. Perhaps, but you cannot have all of your attention in 2 places at once. Smart people choose a sequence, become someone first, then share that someone. Not because a partner would hold them back, but because they refuse to outsource their becoming. Mastery built in singleness becomes generosity in relationship. You won't need your partner to complete you. You will invite them to collaborate with you. There is a difference, and everyone feels it. Mastery is glorious, but it also exposes fissures. That leads to the fourth reason. Choosing singleness is how smart people heal the patterns that would otherwise poison their partnerships. We all carry templates, beliefs about love forged in the heat of childhood, heartbreak, and culture. I must overgive to be kept. Affection is earned through performance. Conflict means abandonment. Chaos is chemistry. If you skip your healing, you will recruit partners who match your wounds. The Stoic project is self-knowledge in the service of virtue. Single by choice gives you the room to turn toward your patterns without creating collateral damage. You can sit with your therapist and admit what your pride hides. You can journal the story underneath your reactions. You can practice new behaviors, receiving without apologizing, saying no without collapsing, expressing needs without making them ultimatums. You can learn to self-soothe instead of making your partner your emergency exit. And you can measure progress in a controlled environment, friendships, work, family, before burdening a romantic relationship with your untested growth. Healing is not linear and not instant. It is a practice. But the person who faces their ghosts alone becomes a shelter in relationship instead of a haunted house. Smart people refuse to treat their partners as a rehab facility. They walk into the clinic first. They earn the right to love cleanly by grieving honestly. They stop repeating the cycle where a new face inherits an old debt. Singleness, held with intention, is not the absence of intimacy. It is intimacy with the parts of you that sabotage intimacy. Do that work now, and the love you choose later has a chance to be peaceful, not performative. Once healing quiets panic, the fifth reason becomes visible. Single by choice is how smart people curate their environment, and environment builds or breaks character. Who you date is not just a person. They are an ecosystem. Their friends will brush against your habits. Their schedule will knock against your routines. Their standards will challenge or lower your own. When you are single, you can build the ecosystem first. You choose a home that reflects your focus, not your flex. You choose friends who are allergic to gossip and addicted to growth. You choose mentors who care more about your future than your feelings. You choose inputs, books, lectures, teachers that raise your ceiling. You create a kitchen that makes health easier than laziness. You build weekends that repair you instead of numbing you. Then, when someone arrives, they are entering a climate you control. People flora that cannot survive in clean air will wither on contact. People flora that thrives in integrity will bloom. This is not manipulation, it is stewardship. The Stoics taught that we cannot control other people, but we can control the conditions we offer them. Single by choice allows you to set those conditions without compromise. And because your environment now supports your highest self, you become less tempted by the shiny, the dramatic, the chaotic. Drama cannot breathe in a room with order. If you ever wondered why certain men and women seem to attract partners of unusually high quality, look behind the charisma. There is usually a curated life, orderly, principled, focused, that repels takers and welcomes givers. Singleness is your chance to build that life fully before you invite someone to enjoy it with you. Curating an environment inevitably includes money, which delivers the sixth reason. Smart people stay single to practice financial virtue without distortion. Money arguments ruin many relationships, not because money is evil, but because avoidance is. If you have not learned to live below your means alone, you will try to borrow dignity from debt together. If you have not learned the difference between generosity and enabling alone, you will call financial self-harm support together. If you have not faced your scarcity fears alone, you will turn a romance into a ledger. Single by choice lets you treat money as a moral teacher. You build the habit of paying yourself first, not because you are greedy, but because your future deserves respect. You create an emergency fund that turns panic into patience. You learn to distinguish investments from impulses. You practice saying, "That's not in my budget," without shame. And you refine your definition of luxury: time, health, peace, optionality. The Stoics valued simplicity not as punishment, but as power. The fewer things that own you, the freer you are to choose the good. When you can sustain your life with dignity alone, two things happen when love arrives. First, you can choose a partner for their character, not their credit score. Second, you can be generous without strings. You aren't counting who paid last. You aren't trying to buy safety with spending. You have safety inside your choices. That removes a massive weight from the relationship and replaces it with spaciousness. Many call this unromantic. The Stoics would call it wise. Romance without responsibility is fireworks in a dry forest. Beautiful, then catastrophic. Put water lines in place while the ground is still yours. With money in order and boundaries intact, the seventh reason unfolds. Single by choice sharpens discernment, and discernment prevents avoidable suffering. Infatuation is a brilliant lawyer. It can argue any case and win in the court of your hormones. Discernment is the sober judge. It asks for evidence. It requires time. It compares words to patterns, apologies to follow-through, sweetness to stress response. When you are single by choice, you're not in a hurry to end the case. You can date slowly, interview wisely, observe how someone treats waiters, roommates, traffic, and truth. You have space to let people show you who they are when their best behavior gets tired. You set experiments. Let's solve a problem together. Let's plan a trip. Let's say no to each other and see what happens. You ask questions that frighten the unserious. What role does work play in your life? How do you repair after you hurt someone? What does a boundary feel like to you? Instead of rushing to define the relationship, you define reality. The Stoics respected reality too much to romance their fantasies. They preferred the pain of clarity over the comfort of illusion. Smart people know that a month of slow discernment can spare them years of slow heartbreak. That's why they can walk away, not because they are cold or commitment-phobic, but because they recognize mismatches without demonizing them. "Not for me" becomes a sentence of gratitude, not hatred. Singleness is the space where you practice that sentence until it comes out clean. Then one day you meet someone who fits, not perfectly but honestly, and the speed limit can increase because the foundation is no longer imagination. It is evidence. Discernment leads to the eighth reason, which reveals the Stoic heart beneath this whole choice. Smart people stay single to keep their capacity for love clean and abundant. Love is not a finite resource, but your attention is. If you pour that attention into almost right connections out of fear, you starve other forms of love that could enlarge your life today. Love for friends, for craft, for community, for service, for learning, for mentorship, for the body that carries you. The Stoics loved expansively, friendship as a virtue, duty as affection, citizenship as care. Single by choice widens your definition of love and, paradoxically, increases your ability to give it in romance later. You arrive undepleted. You don't demand that one person be your entire village. You do not hand them an emotional monopoly and call it devotion. You bring a life they can complement, not carry. This is why the healthiest couples often have had seasons of intentional singleness. They learned how to hold love wide. They come together not to hoard affection, but to multiply it. And if love never arrives romantically, the Stoics would ask a harder question. Have you been robbed of life or freed to serve it? Many will answer with relief. Not everyone is called to marriage, nor to a long-term partnership. The smart, the honest, the brave admit this not as resignation, but as vocation. They make their lives temples anyway, without waiting for a co-architect. In that decision, there is a freedom so luminous it confuses the culture, because you can be happy without its permission. That happiness is not arrogance, it is alignment. All of these reasons converge into the ninth and final one. Single by choice preserves sovereignty, and sovereignty is the root of Stoic joy. Joy, for the Stoic, is not giddiness, it is the steady gladness of a life aligned with reason and virtue. Sovereignty means you remain the author of your days, not a character tossed by other people's moods. It means you can promise yourself something and not break it to keep someone else comfortable. It means you can be kind without being consumed, generous without being gamed, open without being porous. Sovereignty is not against love. It is the only way to protect love from becoming ownership. When you are single by choice, you rehearse that sovereignty daily. You make plans and keep them. You audit your inputs and refine them. You choose your company for their character, not their convenience. You hold your money, your time, your attention, like a gardener holds water in a drought, conserving, directing, refusing to pour it into sand. And because you are not desperate, you can be choosy. You can say no to someone who checks every shallow box and fails the only test that matters. Are we better human beings in each other's presence? If yes, then sovereignty can sign the alliance paper. If no, sovereignty declines respectfully. Either way, your joy stays in your court. You are not waiting on a text to determine whether this afternoon is good. You are not bargaining with your conscience to keep a dinner date. You are free to love without slavery and to live without apology. Let's tie this to your next 24 hours, because philosophy without practice is decoration. Tonight, before you sleep, try the ritual I gave you in our last talk, but with a single twist for this season. Sit with a notebook and write 3 brief letters. The first, to your standards, here is what I will not compromise to feel less alone. The second, to your craft. Here is the time I will protect this week, and here is what I'll produce in it. The third, to your future partner, whether you meet them or never do. Here is the kind of person I'm building so that our love, if it comes, is a blessing and not a burden. Keep the letters. Tomorrow, behave as if you believe them. When loneliness whispers, breathe and repeat. I can feel this, and keep my line. When temptation knocks wearing nostalgia's perfume, open the window for fresh air, not the door for old patterns. When friends ask why you're not rushing, answer with a smile. I am preparing. I am not postponing love. I am preventing regret. When a good person appears, date slowly and kindly. When a misfit appears, release them without ceremony. And when the quiet feels too large, fill it with growth, not noise. An extra page, an extra set, an extra act of service, an extra hour of sleep. That is how you win this season. I'll leave you with an image. Imagine your life as a house you will inhabit for decades. You can fill it quickly with random furniture so the rooms look finished, or you can take time to choose pieces that will outlast fashion and fatigue. One day, a guest will step inside and know, without a sales pitch, that a careful person lives here. They will sense that they are welcome, but that the house does not need them to stand. They will feel invited to add beauty, not obligated to become the foundation. That is what single by choice builds, a house with a spine, and if no guest comes, you will still live well inside it. You will still watch the light move across the floors at noon and feel gratitude that you waited, that you learned, that you built, that you did not sell your peace for company. This is not a rejection of love. It is love's apprenticeship. So if you are single today, choose it on purpose. Govern your life until it obeys your best wisdom. Guard your standards until they become your second nature. Master your craft until generosity spills out of you. Heal your patterns until your touch is clean. Curate your environment until chaos cannot breathe there. Train your money until it serves your freedom. Date with discernment until your yes is sacred. Love widely until romance is not your only river. And protect your sovereignty until joy has a home. When you do, you will not have to announce your strength. The right people will recognize it. The wrong people will retreat from it. And you will wake up, look at your reflection, and see not a lack, but a life, coherent, courageous, and ready for whatever alliance you invite into it, or for the quiet excellence of walking it well on your own. When we ended our last conversation, we spoke about the power of choosing yourself, of raising your standards, of realizing that success begins not in applause or recognition, but in the quiet moment when you look at your reflection and decide not to betray yourself. That lesson leads us naturally here, into a path that very few dare to walk with open eyes, the path of walking alone. Society paints it as failure, as if to be without constant company is to be incomplete. Yet the Stoics knew better. They knew that solitude is not emptiness, it is clarity. They knew that walking alone is not a punishment, it is a privilege, a discipline, a chance to carry your own torch instead of waiting for someone else to light the way. And maybe you felt it too. The sting of being misunderstood, the silence after others leave, the awkward glances when you sit at a table by yourself. You tell yourself you should feel ashamed, that being alone is proof of being unworthy. But deep inside, another voice whispers, a voice harder, sharper, more honest, that this very solitude is your training ground, that this aloneness is not your weakness, but your weapon. Today, I want to show you why, not in cliches, not in soft comfort, but in brutal truths and liberating wisdom. If you stay with me, I will show you the 9 hidden benefits of walking alone through life. And when you finish, you will not just tolerate your solitude, you will embrace it as the furnace where your best self is forged. The first hidden benefit is the brutal one. Walking alone forces you to meet yourself without disguise. When we are constantly surrounded by others, it is easy to wear masks. We laugh at jokes we don't find funny, agree to plans we don't desire, and adopt opinions that aren't ours. In the crowd, performance is survival. But when you walk alone, there is nowhere to hide. You begin to see the real architecture of your thoughts, the flaws in your excuses, the contradictions in your values. At first, this feels like an attack, silence exposing every weakness you've covered with noise. Yet if you can endure that discomfort, it becomes a revelation. Alone, you discover what actually matters to you, not what you've borrowed from others. Alone, you learn whether your dreams are authentic or inherited. Alone, you are forced to look at the gap between who you pretend to be and who you truly are. And here lies the beauty. Once you see the truth, you can begin to align with it. Epictetus said, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" Walking alone answers that question. It ends the waiting. It strips away the applause and the validation and confronts you with the only judge who matters, your own conscience. That honesty, though painful, is the soil where strength grows. This encounter with yourself leads naturally to the second hidden benefit: independence of thought. The crowd is loud. It tells you what to wear, what to buy, who to love, what to chase, and most follow without question. But the one who walks alone begins to hear something different, their own reason. When you're not constantly adjusting your steps to match the rhythm of others, you start to set your own pace. You think longer. You question more deeply. You stop repeating slogans and begin forming principles. This is why so many great thinkers, leaders, and creators valued solitude. It freed them from the gravitational pull of conformity. Seneca wrote that, "The crowd is the greatest threat to virtue." Why? Because in the crowd, it is easier to do what everyone else does than to think about whether it is right. But when you walk alone, you regain the courage to be unpopular, to choose principles over popularity, to think in years instead of likes. Your mind, once colonized by the noise of others, becomes sovereign territory. You no longer fear disagreement because you are rooted in clarity. And when you return to the world, people feel it. You don't echo the chatter, you bring a voice. That voice is born on the road of solitude. Once your thoughts become your own, you unlock the third hidden benefit: the ability to master discipline without witnesses. Many people are disciplined when the lights are on. They work harder when someone is watching, eat healthier when someone is judging, study when someone is checking. But this is not discipline. It is performance. True discipline begins when no one is around to applaud you, when the only accountability is the standard you set for yourself. Walking alone gives you this chance. You wake up early not because anyone expects it, but because you promised yourself. You train when no one is watching because you value your strength, not their admiration. You read when others scroll because you know your mind is a garden, not a landfill. This is the Stoic practice of governing oneself, training the inner ruler so that external rulers cannot enslave you. When you walk alone, you either collapse into indulgence or rise into mastery. And if you choose mastery, you build a strength that is unshakable, because the habits you form in solitude are uncorrupted by performance. They are pure, they belong to you, and that kind of discipline becomes character. But perhaps the most misunderstood benefit, the fourth one, is that walking alone teaches you the rare art of resilience. When others surround you, they can cushion your falls, soften your failures, distract you from your grief. But when you walk alone, there are no buffers. If you stumble, you feel the ground. If you fail, the silence echoes. If you grieve, the room is empty. At first, this feels cruel, yet it is here that resilience is born. Because once you learn that you can survive without constant rescue, you begin to see yourself differently. You stop fearing setbacks because you've endured them. You stop begging for comfort because you've generated it. The Stoics did not ask for a painless life. They trained for an unbreakable spirit. Walking alone forces you into that training. It proves to you again and again that you are harder to kill than your fears suggest, that you can rebuild from ashes, that you can walk through fire and not lose your shape. And once you know this, once you feel it in your bones, you carry a quiet confidence into every room. People sense it. They see that you are not fragile. That strength cannot be faked. It must be forged. And solitude is the forge. Resilience then births the fifth hidden benefit, clarity of values. When you are constantly surrounded by others, it is easy to live on borrowed priorities. You chase what your friends chase, fear what your family fears, desire what the culture desires. But when you walk alone, you are forced to ask, what do I actually want? What do I stand for? What is worth suffering for? Alone, you have the silence to interrogate your choices and the courage to admit which ones are unworthy. Maybe you discover that you value freedom more than luxury, depth more than popularity, discipline more than comfort. Maybe you realize that many of your old ambitions were never yours. They were programs installed by the crowd. In solitude, you uninstall them. You write your own code, and when you return to society, you carry a compass others lack. While they drift from trend to trend, you walk a straighter line. This is why the Stoics insisted that philosophy was not about argument, but about living. It gave you a direction when the world tried to scatter you. Walking alone forces you to choose that direction consciously, not unconsciously. And once you've chosen it, your life accelerates, because clarity is rocket fuel. From clarity comes the sixth hidden benefit, freedom from approval. Most people are slaves to perception. They live as actors on a stage, terrified of losing applause. But the person who has walked alone learns something powerful, that their worth is not measured by likes, by compliments, by someone else's nod. When you've spent enough time building yourself without witnesses, you stop needing witnesses to feel whole. This doesn't make you arrogant, it makes you free. You can speak truth without trimming it to fit expectations. You can say no without explaining your entire biography. You can dress, live, work, and create in ways that align with your inner standards instead of society's mood swings. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, it is possible to be a good man in the palace, or in the ranks, or alone. In other words, virtue is not dependent on audience. Walking alone proves this to you. It breaks the chains of approval addiction. And ironically, once you no longer crave approval, you often gain respect, because people sense you are not bending. They see that you do not need them to breathe. And that paradox is magnetic. With freedom from approval comes the seventh hidden benefit, deeper connections when you choose them. People assume that walking alone means rejecting love or friendship. The opposite is true. Solitude detoxes you from neediness. You no longer enter relationships to fill a void, but to share an abundance. When you are whole alone, you can meet others as equals. You can love without clinging, listen without plotting, give without keeping score. You can walk away when dignity demands it, without collapsing into despair. This makes your relationships cleaner, calmer, stronger. They are no longer transactions, they are voluntary gifts. The Stoics never rejected human bonds, they simply warned against dependency. Walking alone teaches you that difference. It transforms relationships from crutches into choices, and choices, freely made, are the only ones that last. The eighth hidden benefit is one few expect. Walking alone awakens creativity. Noise suffocates imagination. Constant company leaves no space for the mind to wander, to connect strange dots, to invent. But in solitude, the mind stretches. You hear whispers you missed in the crowd. You see patterns, possibilities, ideas. Writers, artists, philosophers, all have testified to this. The world calls it inspiration. The Stoics would call it contemplation. Alone, your brain is not reacting to stimuli, it is creating them. You sketch plans, write words, solve problems, birth visions. The silence becomes your canvas. And when you bring those creations back to society, they feel fresh, original, alive. They carry the signature of someone who dared to think beyond the script. This is why solitude is not only for survival, it is for creation. Walking alone makes you not just stronger, but more inventive. Finally, all of these culminate in the ninth hidden benefit. Walking alone gives you sovereignty. Sovereignty means that your life is yours. Your time is not rented to approval. Your values are not borrowed from the crowd. Your emotions are not puppets of circumstance. You walk with an inner compass, with discipline, with resilience, with clarity. You are not against others. You are simply not owned by them. And that sovereignty is the root of Stoic joy. Not the fragile happiness that depends on sunshine and smiles, but the deeper joy of living in alignment with reason, virtue, and self-respect. Walking alone may look barren from the outside, but inside it is fertile ground. It produces a strength so rare, so steady, that the world cannot shake it. And once you carry that strength, you no longer fear being alone. You know that wherever you walk, you bring your fortress with you. So the next time you find yourself walking alone on a quiet street, in an empty room, in a life season where no one seems to understand you, do not rush to escape it. Lean into it. Remember that you are not being punished. You are being prepared. You are building muscles the crowd does not even know exist. And one day, when you walk back into the noise, people will sense something different about you. They won't be able to name it, but they'll feel it. A steadiness, a freedom, a presence. That is the gift of walking alone. That is the Stoic path. Not isolation, but independence. Not rejection of people, but refusal to betray yourself. Walk it with courage, and you will discover that the path you thought was lonely is actually the only path to strength. When we ended our last journey together, we spoke about how walking alone is not a punishment, but a privilege. We uncovered the hidden benefits of solitude, and perhaps you left with a new appreciation for silence, not as emptiness, but as a training ground. Now, let us go deeper, because solitude is not just a quiet companion. It is not merely a circumstance to tolerate until life offers you something better. Solitude, when embraced, becomes a weapon. Not a weapon that destroys, but one that protects, sharpens, and liberates. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations alone, speaking to himself as if to an eternal friend. Epictetus taught that no tyrant could enslave the man who had mastered his own company. Seneca reminded us that the crowd is often the greatest threat to virtue. You have felt it too. The moments where noise makes you restless, where company feels heavy, where distraction robs you of yourself. And yet, when you step back, when you breathe, when you let solitude hold you, something inside steadies. That steadiness is what we will speak of today. 13 reasons, 13 hidden powers that reveal why solitude is not your weakness, but your greatest weapon. And if you listen carefully, you will not just understand solitude, you will learn to wield it. The first reason solitude is your greatest weapon is because it exposes you to the truth you spend your days avoiding. In the noise of others, it is easy to live borrowed lives, borrowing opinions, dreams, distractions. But when you are alone, the masks fall. You hear your own voice, unfiltered. At first, it unsettles you because it reveals contradictions, promises you broke to yourself, goals you abandoned, standards you compromised. Yet, if you stay, if you face the discomfort without flinching, solitude becomes a mirror sharper than glass. And once the truth is seen, it cannot be unseen. That truth cuts away illusions and forces you to start rebuilding on solid ground. This is why most people run from solitude. It tells the truth without mercy. But this is also why the Stoic embraces it, because the truth, though harsh, is the only material strong enough to build a life upon. From that exposure comes the second reason. Solitude hardens your discipline. It is easy to be disciplined when an audience is watching. Many perform discipline to earn praise, but drop it in private. Solitude tests whether your standards are real. Will you train when no one applauds? Will you rise early when no one cares? Will you honor your word to yourself even when no one will know? Solitude forces you to decide if you are living for yourself or for applause. And when you choose yourself, when you keep promises without witnesses, you forge a character the world cannot bend. Discipline then unlocks the third reason. Solitude gives you sovereignty over your time. In company, your hours are constantly negotiated away. Favors, obligations, entertainment. But in solitude, your hours return to you like a reclaimed inheritance. You see clearly how valuable they are, and you begin to use them with intention. Reading instead of scrolling, creating instead of consuming, resting instead of rushing. Each hour becomes a soldier at your command, not a hostage of other people's demands. This is sovereignty, and sovereignty is strength. That sovereignty leads to the fourth reason. Solitude strengthens your ability to suffer well. The Stoics never promised freedom from suffering. They promised freedom from being broken by it. When you are alone with your pain, with no distraction to dilute it, you learn to endure. You learn to breathe through grief, to carry disappointment without theatrics, to let wounds ache without letting them rule you. In solitude, you discover that suffering is not the end of you. It is simply a teacher. And once you realize this, you stop fearing suffering. Fearless people cannot be controlled. That is why solitude is a weapon. It trains you in the art of surviving yourself. The fifth reason is clarity of values. Noise scrambles your compass. Everyone pulls you toward their priorities, their fears, their pleasures. But alone, the fog clears. You begin to ask the essential questions. What do I live for? What do I stand for? What am I willing to endure? And what will I never again accept? Solitude sharpens these answers, and with sharp answers come sharp choices. The person with values carved in solitude cannot be bribed with flattery or bullied by trends. They move in straight lines where others drift. That clarity makes them dangerous, because they cannot be bought. From clarity arises the sixth reason. Solitude liberates you from the addiction to approval. When you spend enough time alone, you realize you can exist without likes, without validation, without constant applause. You stop being a slave to perception. You begin to live as Marcus Aurelius did, reminding yourself that it is possible to be a good man even in the palace, even in the ranks, even alone. Virtue, not validation, becomes your metric. And once you no longer need approval, the irony is that people begin to respect you more. Respect is drawn to independence like iron to a magnet. With respect for yourself, you discover the seventh reason. Solitude heals your relationships. Most people enter relationships as hungry ghosts, demanding others fill the void they never faced alone. That hunger makes them cling, manipulate, or collapse. But solitude detoxes you from neediness. It teaches you that you can stand without leaning. Then, when you connect, it is not from desperation, but from abundance. You can love without chains, give without ledgers, and walk away without drama. Solitude purifies love by removing dependency. Purity of love opens the eighth reason. Solitude fuels creativity. The mind cannot invent when it is constantly reacting to noise. But in solitude, ideas gather, patterns reveal themselves, visions form. The silence becomes fertile ground. Great art, philosophy, and inventions are born not in crowds, but in rooms of solitude. To create something lasting, you must first endure the stillness where imagination awakens. From creation comes the ninth reason. Solitude prepares you for leadership. True leadership requires the courage to stand apart, to make decisions that will not be applauded, to hold standards that will be mocked. If you have never stood alone in solitude, you will collapse when you must stand alone in public. Solitude is leadership rehearsal. It trains your spine when no one sees, so that when the crowd is watching, you cannot be bent. The 10th reason is resilience in rejection. People will misunderstand you. They will exclude you. They will turn their backs. If you have never learned solitude, this will crush you. But if you have walked alone before, rejection does not paralyze. It simply returns you to your training ground. You know that you can survive without their approval, their company, their support. This is why solitude is armor. You are no longer hostage to inclusion. The 11th reason. Solitude awakens gratitude. When you strip life of constant noise, the small things reappear in their true size. The warmth of tea, the calm of a walk, the power of breath, the weight of a good book. In solitude, you stop demanding spectacle to feel alive. You rediscover the dignity of simplicity. Gratitude becomes not a theory, but a daily experience. And gratitude, as the Stoics knew, is invincibility in disguise. The 12th reason. Solitude aligns you with nature. The Stoics taught that to live according to nature is to live wisely. Nature is not noisy. The tree grows in silence. The river moves without an audience. The stars blaze without applause. When you walk alone, especially in nature, you remember that you too can grow quietly, move steadily, shine without needing witnesses. Solitude retunes you to the deeper rhythms of existence. And finally, the 13th reason. Solitude grants you sovereignty of spirit. Beyond discipline, beyond creativity, beyond clarity, solitude teaches you the ultimate lesson. You are enough. You do not need to be constantly entertained, constantly surrounded, constantly affirmed. You can sit in silence with yourself and still feel whole. This is freedom. This is power. Because the one who needs nothing cannot be enslaved by anything. Solitude is not the absence of love, joy, or success. It is the root of them. So the next time you find yourself alone, resist the urge to escape. Do not rush to fill the silence. Instead, wield it. Recognize that solitude is not exile. It is training. Not loneliness. It is liberation. Not weakness. It is your sharpest weapon. Learn to hold it, and you will walk through life with a strength few will ever understand. The crowd will wonder why you cannot be bent, why you do not beg, why you do not break. The answer will be simple, because you have walked with solitude, and solitude has made you unshakable. You can feel it when the room goes quiet after a fight. The impulse to hand your heart to someone else and say, "Fix it." That's the moment most relationships quietly train you to become smaller than your own life. And this is where the next layer of the truth begins, not to demonize love, but to purify it, so it doesn't turn your spine into a hinge. You become weak in love the instant you outsource your nervous system. If your peace depends on their tone, if your sleep depends on their text, if your worth depends on their mood, you have surrendered the only sovereign territory you'll ever actually own, your mind. The culture will tell you that good partners regulate each other. The Stoic will tell you that good partners regulate themselves so they can meet each other from steadiness, not hunger. When you build your calm on someone else's compliance, you become a fragile architecture. The day they're tired, the moment life hits them, your peace breaks like thin glass. Far better to do the heavy lifting alone. Breathe through your storms. Journal the unflattering truth. Earn your composure with sweat. Then, when you come to the table, you bring shelter, not weather. Love between two regulated adults is a refuge. Love between two dysregulated dependents is a storm with a soundtrack. When your inner climate is steady, you can finally think. And thinking, as the Stoics practiced it, isn't clever debate. It's the daily carpentry of the soul. Yet notice what romance often steals first: philosophy. Nights once given to pages become evenings swallowed by screens. Mornings that began with silence become negotiations about blame. You were sharpening a compass, now you're spinning in a carousel. Seneca didn't write to be admired, he wrote to remember. Marcus didn't fill a notebook to publish a classic, he was tuning his instrument. Philosophy is not an elective. It's preventative maintenance. Without it, resentment drafts your ethics and fatigue edits your boundaries. People say, "We'll get back to our routines when things calm down." But life doesn't calm down, you do. And you only calm down when you return to the practices that build perspective. A page of reflection before the phone, 10 quiet breaths before the reply, a line of principle before the compromise. If a relationship consistently interrupts your philosophy, it's not love, it's amnesia. Wake up. Put the notebook back on the nightstand. Guard the hour that makes you sane like it pays your rent, because it does. Look more closely and you'll see an even sharper blade. The way many relationships become a hiding place from your evolution. The most seductive escape isn't a beach or a bottle. It's the person who makes it easy to ignore the work. You are going to confront your procrastination, but their attention is exquisite anesthesia. You are going to rebuild your health, but the two of you have mastered the gourmet of self-sabotage. You are going to launch the project, but the dopamine of being adored is a convincing counterfeit. When love becomes camouflage, growth shrinks into rituals of reassurance. The Stoic approach is mercilessly kind. Anything that makes you smaller, even if it kisses you, must be questioned. Ask the hardest question a lover can ask. Am I with you because I am becoming truer, or because I am avoiding the truth? If the answer shames you, don't run from the shame. Run with it toward the gym, the book, the budget, the bed on time. Use the relationship as a mirror, not a blanket. Bring back the standards that keep you honest. If they rise with you, you've discovered an ally. If they pull you back, you've discovered a lesson. Either way, you grow, which is the whole point of meeting another soul on the road. Now comes the subtle erosion most never detect until they're exhausted. The way constant negotiation replaces personal policy. Before the relationship, you had rules. Your bedtime, your work blocks, your training window, your Sabbath from screens, your non-negotiable commitments to yourself. After the relationship, everything is let's see and maybe, and it depends how we feel. Feelings are sacred information. They are not governance. Try running a city with vibes instead of laws and watch how quickly the streets fill with chaos. Many couples live like that. Every day becomes a town hall. Every boundary is up for debate. The result is decision fatigue disguised as closeness. The Stoic remedy is simple and rare. Write your constitution. Not for them, before them. What are the 3 to 5 non-negotiables that make you you? Protect them with the quiet ferocity of someone who understands that porous edges lead to shapeless lives. When you carry policy into partnership, you save the relationship from becoming an endless court case. Here's how I care for myself. I would love your partnership in protecting it. I will do the same for yours. That sentence has prevented more resentment than 1,000 arguments ever will. And because identity leaks, the next soft collapse happens on a stage you never meant to build. Performance. 2 people become a brand. The relationship becomes content. Love turns into a press release. You start editing your reality to fit the audience you secretly serve. You don't admit you're struggling because the comments would pity you. You don't set a boundary because the friend group expects you at every noise. You don't leave because you've already told a story about forever and the character you're playing isn't allowed to change. This is how approval addiction metastasizes inside intimacy. The world thinks you're thriving. Your soul knows you're shrinking. The Stoic answer is to choose reality over reputation, privacy over performance. Close the door. Speak honestly. Tell one friend the whole truth. Tell each other what the algorithm doesn't deserve. Anyone can curate. Few can confess. Strength lives in confession because confession gives you back your agency. When you don't owe a crowd an image, you are free to repair the truth or to end the lie. If you want a brutal inventory of hidden weakness, follow the money. Relationships often import financial chaos and baptize it as generosity. We're a team becomes the spell that dissolves responsibility. Goals blur. Budgets bloat. Debt becomes the third partner you never consented to marry. Money is concentrated choice. If you can't say no to yourself, you will not say no to your partner. Financial dependency is not romance. It's leverage waiting for a bad day. The Stoic won't shame spending. The Stoic will require stewardship. Keep separate clarity even if you share accounts. Personal emergency funds, personal skill development budgets, transparent ledgers, and the courage to say, we can afford that, but I won't pay that price with our future. The first person you must be generous to is the person you are becoming. Give them options. Options are oxygen. When a relationship suffocates your options, it is not love, it is a velvet choke. Loosen the grip. Breathe. Build reserves. You become unbribable when you are solvent. Truth has a temperature. If your home is always 72 degrees, pleasant, agreeable, never chilly, you're probably lying somewhere. Comfort is lovely. It is also a notorious accomplice to decay. Many couples mistake the absence of conflict for the presence of health. What they actually have is mutual evasion. You feel the tiny betrayals of silence, the joke that cuts, you make a note never to repeat. The dream that makes them insecure, you mention less and less. The habit you hate but tolerate because they're trying. This is how candor dies. Then intimacy follows. The Stoics prize truth the way sailors prize lighthouses. A lighthouse doesn't negotiate with the storm, it holds its beam. Let there be cold air in the house when truth demands it. Say the thing cleanly, not cruelly. Choose one hard conversation over a year of low-grade resentment. Your relationship can survive discomfort. It cannot survive dishonesty. Every time you choose truth over temporary peace, you make both of you stronger, because strength is the ability to remain intact in the presence of reality. There is another way comfort weakens you. It anesthetizes your edge. You start giving your leftover energy to your goals. You train after you scroll together. You read until you doze on the couch. You ship when the season is quiet, then let momentum evaporate when the social calendar returns. This rhythm is a thief in silk gloves. One day you realize you have become the supporting character in your own life, offering dutiful nods to the protagonist called us. The Stoic correction is ruthless tenderness toward your mission, not because the mission is more important than the person, but because the person you are with was attracted to the vitality your mission created. Protect the fire that made you luminous. Schedule focus like a flight you can't miss. Take the trip alone that refills your curiosity. Put your phone in the other room when you work. Romance is richer when you bring results home instead of excuses. There is a danger the loudest minds fall into, building an echo chamber for two. You watch the same feeds, repeat the same takes, defend the same resentments. Your world narrows to your shared certainties. Certainty feels strong. It is actually brittle. Strength is the flexibility to update when evidence arrives. Solitude again becomes a necessary medicine. Go read someone who offends you. Sit with people who don't share your map. Travel without your familiar interpreters. Let your ideas get sore from friction. When you return, you'll expand the atmosphere of the relationship. Two open minds make a greenhouse. Two closed ones make a bunker. Greenhouses grow. Bunkers only store and rot. Here is the quietest fragility of all, the way relational peace becomes conditional on control. I'm fine as long as they don't. We're good as long as this never. You start negotiating with fate, writing private contracts with reality, guaranteeing outcomes you do not own. The Stoic looks at the contract, laughs gently, tears it in half, and goes back to training. Control is a mood, not a fact. The only thing you own is your response. When peace depends on choreography, every surprise is a threat. When peace depends on principle, every surprise is training. You want anti-fragility, the quality of gaining from stress. You earn it by making a habit of small voluntary discomforts. The early alarm, the cold rinse, the honest no, the quiet walk without your phone, the budget you actually follow, the page you write when your brain is loud. These are not punishments. They are deposits into a balance you will draw on when life withdraws without your permission. Then, when the relationship trembles, you don't shatter. You steady. You adapt. You either repair the bond from groundedness or you release it without self-erasure. Both are forms of strength. If you've stayed with me to this point, you might feel a tightness behind your ribs, not anger at anyone, but grief for the ways you've bargained with your own power. Good. That ache is accurate. Do not drown it with a reel or a rebound. Sit with it long enough to hear what it asks of you. It will not demand theatrics. It will ask for simple, inconvenient fidelity to yourself. You already know the first 3 promises you must keep this week. You can name them right now. Keep them. Watch how your voice returns. Watch how your posture changes. Watch how your reactions slow down and your choices sharpen. If you are in a relationship as you hear this, do not swing the pendulum into dramatics. Don't throw grenades because you found a sword. Start with one boundary you can sustain without a speech. The hour you protect for your mind, the workout that is non-negotiable, the money you will no longer light on fire to keep Friday night interesting, the truth you will say kindly the first time instead of the 5th. If the atmosphere gets colder, put on the sweater of principle and keep going. If your partner wonders what happened, tell them the truth. I forgot how to carry myself. I am remembering now. I want us to be strong, and I cannot be strong while I am weak with myself. The person who loves your essence will move with you. The person who loved your compliance will call your growth a problem. Believe them. Adjust accordingly. And if you are not in a relationship, resist the reflex to sprint toward one now that you feel awake. Don't make your clarity a funnel for the nearest attention. Make it a forge. Spend 90 days as if you were dating your destiny. Put your philosophy on your calendar. Upgrade your inputs. Lift something heavier than your excuses. Build a budget that buys you options, not impressions. Practice the quiet art of being well without witnesses. Walk into rooms with a posture that says, I belong to my standards. When love comes, let it be invited to a home that is already lit, not summoned to bring matches. The Stoics did not despise love. They simply refused to let love replace logos, reason, order, virtue. They knew that the strongest bonds grow between people who are already standing upright, not leaning, not begging, upright. From that posture, love is not a drain. It's an accelerant. It doesn't ask you to amputate parts of yourself to fit. It asks you to stand more fully so that the union has two real pillars. Anything else is scaffolding around emptiness. You wanted the shocking truth about why relationships make you weak. Here it is, without makeup. They don't. You do. When you enter them without sovereignty, when you trade philosophy for comfort, when you outsource regulation, when you fear solitude, when you treat approval like oxygen, when you negotiate your policies into mush, when you choose a we that murders your I. The antidote is not cynicism, it is character. Build it like your life depends on it, because it does. Then let love introduce itself to the person you became. If it stays, it will have to bow to your standards. If it leaves, it will have done you a favor you will one day be wise enough to thank. Before you close this, seal the lesson with a practice. Tonight, write a one-page contract with yourself. 3 lines at the top. I do not outsource my peace. I do not negotiate my core policies. I do not lie to keep company underneath. List the small, boring, unskippable actions that make those lines true in your body. The morning page before the phone, the training window with your phone in another room, the one money rule you will not break this month, the single boundary you will enforce with a sentence and a smile. Sign it, date it, put it where you will trip over it tomorrow. And when tomorrow comes, do not wait to feel like keeping the contract. Keep it because you said you would. That is the essence of Stoic love. For yourself first, so that any love you give away is clean. Walk into your relationship, present or future, not as a petitioner, but as a person who governs their inner city with order and compassion. From that city, your words will be few, your standards clear, your presence steady, your affection generous, your exit dignified if it must come. One day, someone will ask you how you became so composed, so difficult to manipulate, so easy to trust. You will smile, because the answer is simple and hard. You stopped letting love talk you out of your laws. You chose sovereignty over spectacle, philosophy over performance, truth over temporary peace. You learned to be alone well enough to be together without becoming less. That is not a rejection of romance. It is its redemption. Now go rewrite the terms of every bond you keep, starting with the one in the mirror. We ended our last conversation with something you could feel in your spine, that quiet, uncompromising strength that appears the moment you stop negotiating with yourself. You learn that relationships, when entered without sovereignty, can turn your posture into a plea. You wrote a contract with yourself, and maybe for the first time in a while, you kept it. Now the room is quieter. The outside world still shouts, but inside, a steadier voice has begun to speak. If you listen closely, it's telling you something that both comforts and confronts. For this season, maybe longer, you are meant to walk alone, not as a punishment, not as a failure, but as a deliberate path the Stoics would recognize, a road where you become someone you can trust with a life. This isn't isolation. This is intention. And yet it can be confusing because the world has taught you to interpret silence as lack and solitude as a verdict. Tonight, I want to flip that script. I want to hand you a lantern the philosophers carried and show you the markers along your path, the signs that confirm you're not lost. You're chosen for this particular stretch of road. These aren't slogans. They are living standards. If they resonate, it's because a deeper part of you has been waiting to be named. When we're done, you won't apologize for the empty chair at your table. You'll understand that emptiness as sacred space reserved for your future self, someone only solitude can deliver to your door. You know it's the first sign when the noise of a crowd makes you lonelier than the company of your own mind. It happens in rooms where the conversation is loud, but the meaning is small. Rooms where gossip is currency and cynicism passes as intelligence. You look around and feel your energy thinning, like a battery bleeding charge into the air. It's not that you hate people, it's that you can't afford to rent your attention to emptiness anymore. The Stoics were ruthless with inputs because they understood a simple equation. Attention becomes identity. Marcus Aurelius wrote privately every morning because he knew Rome would try to draft his mind into its circus. You don't wear a crown, but your life is still an empire to govern. If the atmosphere of a room regularly downgrades your standards, that's not a sign you're antisocial. It's a sign you're outgrowing the social that is anti-you. Walking alone here isn't contempt, it's conservation. You're preserving the most precious fuel you have, clear attention for work that deserves it, the book that refines your thought, the breath that organizes your emotions, the craft that won't improve under fluorescent chatter. You leave early not because you're better, but because you're building. And when you go, you take with you a power most never acquire, the ability to generate momentum without applause. That is not loneliness. That is leadership practice in private. The second sign arrives when your values have become more precise than your explanations. You used to debate your boundaries. You drafted careful paragraphs to justify why you wouldn't drink on weeknights, why you'd guard your mornings, why your phone sleeps outside your bedroom. But something has changed. The more you practice these policies, the less you need permission to keep them. Your values have hardened into quiet law, and the law inside you no longer begs the court of public opinion. This is a Stoic threshold. Seneca said we suffer more in imagination than in reality. You used to suffer imaginary arguments about the why of your standards. Now you live the reality of them. Your calendar has become a constitution with a few articles you refuse to amend. Reading before screens, sweat before comfort, craft before commentary, nature before noise. People will call you inflexible. That's fine. Rivers look inflexible to those trying to swim upstream. Let them splash. You will keep flowing. When values are clear, decisions get light. The dinner you skip, the project you decline, the habit you defend, none require fireworks. You simply honor the policy and move on. This is why you are meant to walk alone right now, not because the world is unworthy, but because your standards are newborn, and newborns need protection. In solitude, Policies become reflexes, and reflexes are what you will rely on when life accelerates and you no longer have time to hold debates with your own conscience. The point is not to be rigid, it is to be reliable, to yourself first. From that reliability, your future commitments will be chosen, not stumbled into. The third sign announces itself in the mirror. You trust your quiet more than other people's urgency. You feel this when the message arrives with fireworks. Limited time, once in a lifetime. Act now. Earlier versions of you would have sprinted, not out of conviction, but out of fear. Fear of missing out, fear of falling behind, fear that your life needs a borrowed script to be interesting. Now you pause, breathe, and consult the counsel that actually knows your life, your principles, your priorities, your prepared plans. The Stoics trained this reflex with premeditatio malorum, rehearsing adversity in their mind so surprise would lose its leverage. You're practicing a version of that discipline with opportunities, rehearsing the consequences before committing. Alone, without the gravitational pull of someone else's excitement, you can see the real cost of yes. What it asks from your mornings, your focus blocks, your recovery, your cash flow, your conscience. When the numbers don't align, you don't attack the offer, you align yourself. No returns to your mouth as a neutral word, not a defensive shield. That's how you know you're meant to walk alone, because you need a season where no teaches you what yes is worth. The world will always reward speed. Your future will only reward accuracy. Solitude slows you into precision. It strips the neon from the pitch and presents you the ledger. And ledgers, unlike moods, do not lie. The fourth sign is tender and fierce at once. You're more interested in repairing your story than replaying your history. In group settings, notice how easily the conversation turns toward old wounds. Misery has exquisite memory. Healing prefers the present tense. You used to rehearse betrayals because they gave you a shape to point to when you felt formless. But solitude has started a different ritual. You sit with a notebook and ask inventory questions that bruise and bless at the same time. What boundary did I ignore before that hurt arrived? Which red flags did I repaint? What was I unwilling to say when the moment demanded it? This isn't self-blame, it's self-respect. It's you stepping into authorship. The Stoics taught that you can't control the past, but you can control what you extract from it. What you're extracting now are standards. You're converting grief into guardrails, embarrassment into evidence, anger into architecture. This conversion requires quiet. In a crowd, emotions recruit an audience, and the performance continues. Alone, emotions recruit meaning, and the pattern ends. That's why walking alone is not avoidance. It's surgery. You're removing narratives that calcified around pain and implanting policies that prevent repetition. When the phone lights with a familiar number you once equated with fate, you don't answer from nostalgia. You answer, if at all, from new law. You owe history honesty. You owe your future clarity. Solitude gives you both. The fifth sign appears in your work. You've stopped announcing and started accumulating. There was a time when you needed to narrate your goals to feel them, an identity by declaration. New project coming, big things soon, grind mode. It wasn't deceit, it was dopamine. You mistook exposure for progress, but recently you caught a different high. Watching a private streak hit triple digits, seeing skill marks inch forward, feeling draft 12 read like a different author lived inside you. You became a collector of finished reps, not compliments. And in that quiet collection, a new confidence appeared. Not bravado, the calm of competence. The Stoics would nod here. They treated excellence as the inevitable byproduct of appropriate action repeated relentlessly. Alone, you have eliminated the friction of performative urgency. No more coordinating with 3 calendars to win the week together. No more convincing someone to care about your sprint. You care. You sprint. Your craft sits in the center of your day like a fire that doesn't ask to be seen to stay hot. This is not a vow to be a hermit forever. It's a recognition that mastery hates divided custody. For a while, your attention belongs to the work with a possessive intensity. The right people will not be threatened by this. They will be attracted to it when the time is right. Until then, let your portfolio say what your mouth no longer needs to. The 6th sign is plain and unpopular. You've started to prefer truth to temperature. Most groups keep peace by adjusting the thermostat of honesty. If someone's insecurity chills the room, everyone turns the dial toward flattery. If someone's arrogance heats the room, everyone opens the window of sarcasm. You used to play along. Now you can't. Your body tells on you, a small tightening in your throat when you laugh at a joke that cuts, a heaviness in your chest when you nod at an idea you won't live. You feel the ethical hangover the next day. Solitude has raised your sensitivity. It's harder to tolerate the thin films of dishonesty that grease social gears. That's not you being difficult. That's you being aligned. The Stoics spoke of living according to nature, which in practice meant living according to reality. Reality doesn't change its facts to keep a brunch pleasant. You've decided to join it. In conversation, you say the clean sentence earlier. You don't weaponize it. You don't withdraw it. You don't decorate it. You let discomfort do its job. Clarify. Sometimes the group rises. Sometimes it rejects the light and calls it harsh. Either outcome serves you. If they rise, you found peers. If they reject, you found freedom. Walking alone protects your capacity to tell the truth without theatrical courage. It becomes normal, even gentle, and the gentle truth, delivered consistently, has a way of reorganizing your life toward people who can breathe it. You'll recognize the 7th sign when your relationship to money becomes principled instead of performative. You used to spend to signal taste, generosity, belonging, success. None of these are crimes, they're just expensive. In solitude, the signaling audience disappears. What remains is the ledger and the future. The Stoic view is simple. Money is morally neutral. Your use of it is not. You begin to allocate cash like it's the condensed form of freedom that it is. Emergency reserves so your no can be clean. Investment in skills so your future can be optional. Experiences that expand your mind more than your feed. Tools that multiply your output rather than your image. You find joy in watching your burn rate drop because the drop translates into choice. That choice will one day keep you from saying yes to things that insult your values and no to things that summon your courage. This is a sign you're meant to walk alone right now because money, like attention, compounds best when you stop leaking it to look a part you haven't auditioned for. Wealth isn't just a number, it's a vote for the kind of life you want to be eligible for. Vote accordingly. Another sign appears in your mornings. You wake before the world expects you, not to prove a point, but to meet one. The point where intention becomes momentum. The first 10 minutes of your day used to vanish into a rectangle of light. Now they belong to a pen, a page, a breath, a decision you make before the algorithm makes one for you. The Stoics began with reminders of mortality, of virtue, of the narrow path between impulse and action. You have created your version, a question you won't dodge, a standard you won't negotiate, a priority you won't outsource. And because you no longer need company to keep your promises, your day doesn't require choreography to be strong. This is why you're meant to walk alone, because your mornings are classrooms, and in those classrooms, you're becoming a student who can teach by example when the time comes to lead. The day will still test you. That's fine. Tests feel less like ambushes when you've done your own training before dawn. You know the ninth sign by its quiet absence. You no longer chase conflict to feel alive. When your life lacks meaning, drama is a cheap substitute. You stir a pot, pick a fight, resurrect a grudge, not because you love chaos, but because chaos gives you a pulse. In solitude, you built a better pulse, a project that challenges you, a practice that humbles you, a discipline that steadies you. Now chaos feels like a tax on your best work. You don't avoid necessary confrontation. You simply refuse recreational conflict. The Stoic concept of apatheia was never apathy. It was composure that can act without being kidnapped by emotion. You are staging that composure with daily reps of restraint. Someone sends the bait. You let the hook pass. Someone misreads you. You correct once, then exit. Someone tries to import their storm into your afternoon. You offer shelter if it's a true emergency. Otherwise, you offer respect from outside the weather. This isn't coldness. It's protecting the conditions that allow you to contribute. Only empty cups crave fights. Yours is filling, and you'd rather pour than spill. The 10th sign is paradoxical. You feel more compassion for others the more time you spend alone. Distance is making your empathy cleaner. Why? Because solitude stripped your people-pleasing. Without the need to be liked, you can finally love. Without ledger, without performance, without confusing rescue with respect. You listen because listening is useful, not because you're auditioning for approval. You help because help aligns with your values, not because your identity depends on being needed. Stoic kindness is sturdy. It doesn't collapse into self-erasure. Alone, you learn to keep your shape in the presence of other people's pain. Now your presence does something you used to try to force. It calms. You become the friend who can sit with someone's chaos without becoming chaotic. The colleague whose feedback lands because you don't lace it with your own insecurity. The partner, in any sense, who can be counted on to say the true thing in the right tone. Compassion that doesn't require applause is rare. You're building it where applause can't follow you, behind a closed door. And the 11th sign, the one that gathers all the others, like a parent gathering children at dusk. You feel an unexplainable dignity when you honor small promises to yourself, and you refuse to trade that dignity for company. You sense it when you close your laptop at the time you said, when you leave the party at the hour you pledged, when you skip the second drink you didn't pre-approve, when you stand up to stretch because your body asked, when you put your phone in the other room because your mind deserved quiet. None of these are dramatic. They are deeply boring. And yet each one leaves a residue, call it self-respect, that brightens your eyes in ways cosmetics cannot. You start to prefer that brightness to the buzz of being wanted. Not because you plan to walk alone forever, but because you have discovered the law that steers all healthy companionship. I will not betray myself to belong. The Stoics would call this living in accord with your demon, your guiding principle. You don't need metaphysics to feel it. You feel it now. And if you can be faithful to it in an empty room, you will be faithful to it in a crowded life. That is why solitude chose you. not to separate you from love, but to prepare you for a love that won't ask you to dim. Let's stitch these signs into a single, livable practice without breaking the spell of your momentum. Tonight, give yourself 30 unbroken minutes, no witnesses, to conduct a quiet audit. Not a courtroom, a council. Ask 3 questions and answer them without poetry. First, which room, feed or pattern predictably lowers my standards? Remove it for 1 week and measure the lift in your energy. Second, which policy most needs to graduate from good idea to law? Put it on your calendar like an appointment with your future. Third, which unfinished work would make the next 90 days undeniable if I gave it 90 deliberate sessions? Block them, guard them, ignore the applause and count the reps. These aren't hacks, they're evidence that you're taking your path seriously. When the world asks where you went, tell the truth without theatrics. You stepped off the stage to become someone worth watching. When friends complain that you're less available, be generous and clear. You're building capacity so that when you do show up, you arrive with substance instead of stories. When loneliness visits, as it will, treat it like weather, not identity. Make tea, take the walk, lift the weight, read the page, write the line, phone a mentor who respects your solitude. Then return to your road. You are not being sentenced to walk alone. You are being summoned. There is a difference. Sentences punish, summonses prepare. The signs you recognize tonight are not exit signs from connection. They're mile markers toward a self that can host connection without collapsing. Keep going. Keep your standards visible and your explanations short. Keep your mornings for yourself and your evenings for meaning. Keep your spending aligned with the life you're auditioning for. Keep closing the gap between what you admire and what you do. When the next season comes, and it will, you'll meet it upright. You will not beg for belonging. You'll extend it. You will not barter with your integrity for a chair at a noisy table. You'll set a quiet one and watch the right people find it. And if the road stretches longer than you expected, remember what the Stoics remembered every dawn. You already have what you need to live nobly today. Reason to guide you, virtue to aim you, breath to steady you, action to dignify you. You're not alone on this path. You're with the best of yourself. That is not a consolation prize. That is the foundation of a life that won't crumble when the door finally opens and someone extraordinary walks in. When that day arrives, let them find you doing exactly what you did tonight, honoring the signs, keeping the contract, walking on purpose. We left our last conversation with something sacred in your hands, the quiet contract you signed with yourself. You learned that the world shifts the moment you stop begging it to like you and start training it to respect you. You felt that peculiar steadiness the Stoics talk about, the calm that doesn't need witnesses. And now the room is quieter than it's ever been. No applause, no audience, just you and the echo of your own promise. This is the threshold most people never cross. They flirt with solitude when it flatters them, then sprint back to noise when it demands honesty. But you stayed. And because you stayed, a new kind of curriculum unfolds, one with no teacher to impress and no curve to save you. Only 10 lessons, each of them harsh, all of them liberating. When you accept them, you won't walk alone as a refusal of love. You'll walk alone as a rehearsal for freedom. That is where true power begins. The first harsh truth is that solitude exposes illusions that company politely leaves intact. In a crowd, you can outsource your identity to the reflected approval in other people's eyes. If they laugh, you must be funny. If they nod, you must be right. If they reach for you, you must be worthy. Alone, that scaffolding falls, and what remains is the load-bearing structure of who you actually are. It will creak at first. You'll hear the cracks you painted over with charm. You'll notice the sag in beams you swore were solid. This is the moment most people call loneliness, but the Stoic calls it inspection. Inspection is uncomfortable by design. It trades anesthesia for accuracy. Keep looking. List the promises you broke to yourself, the boundaries you negotiated away because the moment felt easier than the long term, the habits that impersonate rest while stealing your future. Then invert them. Replace the story with a standard, the mood with a rule, the performance with a practice. You don't need a crowd to fix a foundation. You need a level, a plumb line, a willingness to rebuild when no one is clapping. When the illusions fall, do not mourn them. They were never holding you up. Reality was. And reality, brutal, simple, liberating, is a better friend than any applause could be. The second harsh truth is that solitude feels like exile before it becomes freedom. The first nights are louder than concerts. Appliances hum like sirens. The clock shouts each second into your chest. Your hand reaches for the phone like a reflex, not because you have something to say, but because you want something to silence. Breathe. Stay where you are. The body mistakes unfamiliar for unsafe. Give it time to learn the difference. While you sit, remember what Marcus Aurelius wrote in his tent with an empire outside. Nowhere you go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. He didn't write that because the tent was quiet. He wrote it because he trained the tent to become quiet. That is your apprenticeship. Turn exile into sanctuary with rituals that dignify the space. A page before the screen, a walk before the world, a clean room before a clean reply. Soon the silence that mocked you starts to feed you. You begin to like your own company, not because you think you're perfect, but because you can be honest there. Freedom isn't the absence of people, it's the absence of need. When the door finally opens and someone extraordinary arrives, you won't hand them your oxygen mask, you'll offer them a spare. The third harsh truth is that walking alone strips away comfort until competence is your only insulation. When there's nobody to lean on, you either learn or you suffer. Leaky tap? You watch the video and fix it. Budget bleeding? You open the ledger and cauterize it. Meals, cleaning, scheduling, recovery. You discover that each unattended detail becomes a thief. Many call this tedious. The Stoic calls it training. Every mundane skill you acquire quietly returns something precious, the sense that your life is under management, not under luck, not under somebody else's mood, under management. Competence is dignity in practical clothing. It is also contagious. Your desk starts to look the way your mind feels. Your bank account starts to match your priorities. Your calendar stops apologizing for your standards. Comfort gives you warm moments. Competence gives you a warm life. The cost is inconvenience. Pay it. The dividend is sovereignty. The fourth harsh truth is that solitude makes you sit with pain without anesthetic. And that's where it stops being just pain. In company, grief becomes theatre. The retelling, the retweeting, the chorus that validates your wound until it fuses with your identity. Alone, grief has no audience, so it talks to you instead of through you. It asks unfair questions. What boundary did you ignore? What red flag did you repaint? What pattern did you dignify with the word chemistry? You will want to scroll. Don't. You will want to call someone to co-sign your old story. Don't. Write the letter you'll never send. Let your hand put the blame where it belongs, and then hold it long enough to extract the lesson. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Solitude relocates your suffering from a boundless theater into a focused workshop. Pain becomes a tutor, not a tyrant. You still cry, you still ache, but tears become rinses and ache becomes architecture. Hurt that is metabolized becomes standards. Hurt that is publicized becomes personality. Choose who you want to be. The fifth harsh truth is that solitude reveals your approval addiction in brutal clarity. Without notifications to spike your value, you feel the flat line of internal metrics you never built. You will be tempted to post progress just to hear the world say, "Good job." Resist. Do the set. Do the session. Do the sentence. Close the ring. Put a tick next to the promise. And then, this is the hard part, tell no one until the prize is earned in reality, not in perception. The first week feels like quitting caffeine. The headaches of unmet validation are real. But then a different chemistry appears, the calm of private mastery. You discover why Stoics considered public opinion an indifferent, neither good nor bad, unless you make your soul depend on it. This independence does not make you cold. It makes you unbribable. Flattery can't purchase your standards, and criticism can't mortgage your mood. When you return to the crowd, you'll still enjoy a kind word, you'll still absorb a smart critique, but neither becomes your oxygen. Power is not shouting that you don't care. Power is quietly not needing to. The sixth harsh truth is that solitude shrinks your circle and for a while amplifies your grief. You will lose built-in plans, default invitations, the lazy intimacy of proximity. Some departures will sting because you thought loyalty meant forever. It doesn't. Loyalty means honesty. If your standards expose their excuses, your quiet may sound like judgment to someone still addicted to noise. Bless them, then let them go. Do not retaliate with superiority. That is just insecurity wearing a robe. Walk on. As you do, something precise begins to take shape. A smaller table with better conversations, friendships that don't require constant reassurance to feel secure, mentors who value your solitude because it is the soil where their advice will root. The circle tightens, the depth increases. 1 hour with a person who respects your boundaries is worth a year with someone who tolerates them. The pain of pruning is real. So is the harvest. The seventh harsh truth is that your discipline only counts when nobody would blame you for skipping. People love the aesthetics of early alarms and clean notebooks. They love less the act of standing up when the bed is warm and the world is forgiving. Alone, there are no penalties for betrayal except the ones you impose. This is why so many people talk about habits, and so few have identities. Habits are what you attempt. Identity is what you do without debate. The Stoic method is simple and savage. Make a very small number of non-negotiables, then never negotiate them. A page before the phone, sweat before comfort, deep work before shallow chatter. Food that serves the day rather than the mood. The practices are individual. The principle is universal. You become trustworthy to yourself. And when you are trustworthy to yourself, your promises to others become lighter because they are no longer theater. Character is what you carry into rooms before you speak. Build it alone, and rooms will adjust to it. The eighth harsh truth is that boredom is a mirror, not a prison. We have been trained to escape the slightest lull with a scrolling reflex so rehearsed it bypasses conscious choice. In solitude, if you refuse the reflex, something unnerving emerges, the raw texture of an unoccupied mind. It fidgets, it complains, it invents cravings. Stay. Underneath those jitters sits an engine you have ignored, the imagination that stitched your childhood out of nothing but time. That engine knows how to make meaning from air. Give it constraints, a blank page and 20 minutes, a question and a walk, a problem and a whiteboard. Boredom converts to incubation when it is not medicated. Most genius is simply attention that didn't fracture at the 50-second mark. Seneca said, "Leisure guided by philosophy is not idleness. It is the workshop where you build the tools your future will use in emergencies. Your best ideas do not arrive on command. They visit rooms that welcome them. Solitude, with its silence and its patience, is a room with the door open." The ninth harsh truth is that self-respect is loudest when no one can hear it. It shows up in the way your home looks when you're the only one who will see it, in the way your voice sounds in your own head when you are late and could lie, in the way you dress for a day with no witnesses, in the way you speak about people who cannot correct the record. When you walk alone, these micro-choices are no longer side notes, they are the plot. Each is a vote for or against the person you are trying to become. Cast enough lazy votes and your identity gerrymanders itself into someone you don't admire. Cast enough disciplined votes and your reputation with yourself climbs to a credit score that can finance difficult decisions. Marcus wrote reminders to himself not to be Caesarified, not to let privilege rot his plain humanity. You do your own version. Don't become comfortified. Keep the bed made because you respect your mind, not because you expect a guest. Keep your language clean because truth deserves a clear channel, not because HR might be listening. Keep your word because you love being a person who doesn't need policing. These small honors build the only audience that matters, your conscience. When it claps, the room can be empty and still feel like home. And the 10th harsh truth, the one that binds all the others with a thread only solitude can braid. Walking alone is not a phase you endure until company returns. It is a companion you carry into every season. Even if your life fills with love, leadership, family, responsibility, the decisive moments will still be solitary. The breath before you tell the truth, the minute after you read the number in your bank account, the pause between the email and the send, the quiet before you accept or decline the tempting offer, the night you forgive yourself without a jury. Stoicism doesn't glamorize loneliness. It dignifies the assignments only you can complete. Master solitude now, and you will never again mistake attention for intimacy or noise for significance. The crowd will still be there. The table will still have chairs. But you will not sit because you're afraid to stand. You will sit because your principles approve the company. Your calendar can afford the time. Your conscience can share the silence. If the room adds weight, you will not drown in it. If the room adds wind, you will not chase it. You will remain yourself, which is the beginning and the end of freedom. Notice how each truth is not a slogan to memorize, but a structure to live inside. This is why walking alone builds power that lasts, because it forces you out of performance into practice, out of comfort into competence, out of craving into clarity, out of dependency into dignity. The world may still misread your road, call it stubbornness, call it aloofness, call it a phase. You will not correct them. You will be too busy building the habits that will still be holding when the cheering stops. So let's bring this out of abstraction and into your next 24 hours. Do not broadcast anything Do not ask permission. Put one harsh truth into motion and let it change the architecture of your day. If illusions are thick, do an audit instead of a scroll. List 3 promises you broke to yourself last week and make a plan to keep one today. If exile aches, declare a ritual that turns your room into a sanctuary. A page before the screen, 10 breaths before the reply, a walk without headphones to let your mind settle. If comfort is leaking competence, pick one domestic friction and close the loop. Repair, clean, organize, systematize, so your environment stops protesting your ambitions. If pain keeps knocking, schedule an hour with your notebook and let it speak without a witness, then extract one policy that will prevent repetition. If approval hunger returns, keep one win private. Let the glow belong to you, not the feed. If your circle is shrinking, replace volume with depth by setting one conversation with someone who respects your boundaries. If discipline wobbles, reduce your non-negotiables to 3 and treat them like flights. On time, no drama. If boredom stalks you, refuse the drug and give it a task. If self-respect whispers, amplify it by dressing for the day you're building, not the couch you're sitting on. And if the lifelong companion of solitude feels heavy, lift with it, not against it, until you can carry it without thinking. In a year, if you live this way, your voice will lower without trying. Your calendar will reflect your priorities without argument. Your bank account will feel less like a mood and more like a map. Your relationships will look fewer and richer. Your work will carry the weight of someone who trains when no one watches. Your presence will make rooms tidier in spirit, the way a lighthouse tidies a dark coast, not by criticizing the waves, but by giving sailors somewhere true to aim. People will ask you for hacks. You will smile because there aren't any. There is only the road, the 10 harsh truths, and the courage to keep walking when comfort begs you to sit down. The last thing I will leave with you is the image that has carried me through every quiet season. A craftsman in a small shop by a river, door open, lamp on, tools arranged, nobody inside but the work. The town might forget his name for a while, the market might ignore his products for a season, but every day he shows up, alone, and makes the next honest thing. And when the time comes, when a traveler needs exactly what he has built, there is no scramble, there is no panic, there is no pretend. There is only a hand reaching to a shelf where reality has been waiting. Be that craftsman. Make your life that shop. Keep the door open. Keep the lamp on. Keep the tools arranged. Keep the work honest. Walk alone as if the future is already on its way to find you, because it is. When it arrives, it will not ask who applauded you. It will ask who you became when nobody did. We ended our last conversation with something simple and dangerous in your hands. The ability to keep a promise with no witnesses. You felt it when you closed a tab instead of escaping into it. When you finished a task without announcing it. When you chose order in a room that no one else would ever see. That quiet power didn't need applause. It needed consistency. And consistency, this is the part most people miss, does not grow in crowds. It grows in silence. If the last video helped you stop negotiating with your standards, this one will show you why the place where those standards harden into identity is solitude. Not a trendy retreat, not a curated weekend. The ordinary, inconvenient, unphotogenic solitude that asks for nothing and reveals everything. If you stay with me to the end, you'll understand why the Stoics trained alone even when they led nations, why the habits that change your life require a door that closes, and why discipline becomes unbreakable the moment you stop needing company to keep it. The first reason solitude creates unbreakable discipline is that solitude strips away negotiation. In groups, every decision becomes a town hall. What time should we start? Do we really need to do it today? Shouldn't we rest because it's cloudy, because it's hot, because it's Tuesday? Democracy is wonderful for politics and fatal for habits. Your standards get voted on by moods. Alone, there is no parliament, only policy. You wake, you write, you train, you read, not because anyone expects it, but because the constitution of your life has already been ratified. The Stoics understood this at a level we call unfashionable because it is uncompromising. Marcus Aurelius didn't ask Rome for permission to be disciplined, he asked himself. He wrote his orders for the day in the first person because he knew that the most dangerous political party in the world is the party of your impulses, and it wins landslides. Solitude dissolves the negotiations that impulses thrive in. There is no later, there is only the calendar you already signed. And when you keep one policy today, tomorrow arrives lighter because you didn't teach your mind that boundaries bend when you're bored. This is how discipline becomes unbreakable, not by hype, but by removing the courtroom where your excuses used to win. The second reason is that solitude replaces performance with practice. Around people, discipline easily becomes theatre. You meal prep for an audience, you post your run for applause, you tidy your desk for the camera. None of that is evil, but all of it is fragile. If the audience leaves, so does the effort. Alone, the stage lights cut, and you are left with the work. There is nowhere to sell your effort except to the only buyer that matters, your conscience. You begin to feel the worth of a page no one reads, the dignity of a workout no one sees, the satisfaction of a room arranged for the sake of your own concentration. It's not less motivating, it's more. The feedback loop moves from external to internal. You experience the private chemistry the Stoics prized. Progress measured not in claps, but in clarity. You stop needing to feel inspired because you start loving the feeling of being dependable. And that love is quieter than motivation, but 10 times stronger. Performance collapses the minute the audience gets bored. Practice thrives because repetition is its oxygen. Keep practicing without witnesses and you'll find something the internet can't give you. An identity built on actions you would do even if the world forgot you. Break that and you'd break yourself, not your brand. That's what unbreakable means. The third reason is painful and purifying. Solitude confronts you with your appetites until you learn to rule them. Distraction is always available in company. There is always another conversation, another plan, another episode to watch together. Alone, you meet cravings with nothing to hide behind. You feel the itch to scroll the moment a sentence gets difficult. You feel the pull toward sugar when the afternoon dips. You feel the curiosity to open 12 tabs when the one tab in front of you is demanding. This is where most people misinterpret solitude as suffering when it is actually training. Stoic discipline is not denial for denial's sake. It is authority over desire, so you can choose the good freely. Alone, you learn to breathe through the itch, to drink water before you snack, to set a timer when your focus wobbles, to put your phone in another room as if it were fire you respect. Each tiny refusal is a vote for a self that is not run by urges. People imagine discipline as an Iron Man screaming at himself in the mirror. In practice, it's 1,000 soft corrections. It's the voice that says, we finish this paragraph. We stand up and stretch. We close at 9 p.m. because tomorrow matters. When you can make those corrections without anyone watching, you have crossed the hardest threshold. Your appetites have lost their veto. From there, consistency stops being a moral drama and starts being logistics. The fourth reason is that solitude makes your environment honest. Discipline is not only about willpower, it's about architecture. In company, you can outsource order to other people's routines. Your roommate keeps the kitchen usable. Your team schedules the deep work blocks. Your partner drags you to bed. Alone, entropy becomes visible. The dishes don't walk themselves into the sink. The clothes don't fold themselves. The notifications don't silence themselves. If you don't build systems, your future gets taxed by the chaos you didn't clean. This is harsh the first week and glorious the second, because you realize how many of your motivation problems were actually friction problems. You put the book on your pillow so you read before sleep. You set the coffee for 5:30 so the morning has a ritual. You keep your gym shoes by the door so inertia has one less argument. You block websites during work hours so your mind stops sprinting in circles. Seneca said that a person who wastes their day is not deprived by fate, but by fault. Solitude makes that plain and gives you back the lever to move it. You become the kind of person whose environment helps instead of harms. The room starts telling the truth about your priorities. Walk into that room, and you won't need a pep talk. You'll have a map. The fifth reason is that solitude converts pain into policies. Without quiet, pain becomes a performance loop. You tell the story, you get the sympathy. Nothing changes. The story grows roots. Alone, there is no audience for your narrative. There is only the problem and the pen. You sit down and write the version where you are not a victim but a participant, and you make the one rule that guarantees you won't re-enlist in the same war. No dating people who drink like a sport. No emails after 7 p.m. because you ruin tomorrow. No just 5 minutes on apps before you write. No saying yes in the room and resenting it in the car. These aren't vibes, they're laws. And laws, once enforced, reduce the need for heroics. The Stoics weren't interested in catharsis. They were obsessed with prevention. They saw the world clearly and adjusted themselves to it. Solitude hands you the clarity to do the same. You don't need to win every day. You need a rule set that makes losing harder. Discipline becomes unbreakable when it stops relying on your best mood and starts relying on your best design. The sixth reason is that solitude turns mornings into command centers. The first 10 minutes after waking are either a roulette wheel you spin with your thumb or a small council you chair with your mind. In company, mornings are easily colonized by other people's urgencies, text chains, inbox explosions, the weather of someone else's mood. Alone, you can declare jurisdiction. You begin with one question that cuts fog. What would make today a victory, even if nothing else goes right? You write it. You schedule it. You protect it, like it pays your rent, because it does. Then you choose a preface for the day that rehearses who you are, a page of Marcus, a paragraph to yourself, a breathing drill, 3 minutes of gratitude you don't post. You make the bed because you're the kind of person who finishes small beginnings. You drink water because you respect the machine that carries you. You dress in a way that reminds your posture there is work to do. People treat this as cosmetic. It isn't. It's composure. The day bends toward people whose mornings are rehearsals for intention. And when interruptions arrive, as they will, you return to the command center's single directive instead of reacting to every gust of wind. Discipline hardens when the day has a spine. Solitude gives you the time to build it before the world asks you to use it. The seventh reason is the one that holds the rest together. Solitude teaches you to enjoy the feeling of fidelity, not excitement, not novelty. Fidelity, the quiet pride of doing what you said you'd do when no one could punish you for breaking it. It's a small feeling at first, so small you could miss it while searching for motivation, but it compounds. The second week, you notice your voice sounds different in your head. The third week, you notice you walk through doors as if you belong where your standards belong. The fourth week, you notice people reacting to a steadiness you didn't announce. The Stoics wrote about eudaimonia, well-being that comes from living in harmony with your inner guide. We've confused that with happiness. It's closer to self-respect. When fidelity becomes your favorite sensation, breaking your discipline feels like breaking your word, not breaking a streak. That's why it becomes unbreakable. You would rather disappoint a stranger than your standard. You would rather leave a party early than leave your principle behind. You would rather be misunderstood today than unmade tomorrow. That kind of preference can't be learned in a crowd, because a crowd will always offer you a cheaper high. Only solitude can teach you to love the expensive one. So here is how you stitch these reasons into a life without turning this into a list you'll lose. Tonight, before sleep, write a policy, not a paragraph, about one place you leak discipline. Make it short enough to remember when you're tired and clear enough to enforce when you're tempted. Tomorrow morning, treat the first 10 minutes like a border crossing. No device until you've stamped your passport with one sentence about who you are and one action that proves it. During the day, notice where your appetites ask for negotiation. Give them structure instead of debate. In the evening, convert any pain you felt into one preventive line. Clean 1 square meter of the room that holds your work so your environment becomes an accomplice. And tell no one. Let fidelity be its own reward. In a week, you won't need my voice. You'll hear your own. In a month, you won't need motivation. You'll have momentum. In a year, you will be busy doing what discipline always promised it would do for you. Make your life heavy with meaning and light with regret. You will still love people. You will still build with others. You will still open your door. But the center of your discipline will no longer live in their approval, their schedule, their seriousness. It will live in the place where you learn to stand alone without asking the room to hold you up. That is the quiet privilege of Stoic solitude. It is not a rejection of the world. It is preparation to move through the world unbent. And when you arrive in the places you are going, when the work is large and the voices are loud, and the winds change their mind by the hour, you will not have to look around to remember who you are. You will look within and recognize a person whose policies survived the weather. This is how solitude creates unbreakable discipline. It ends negotiation. It replaces performance with practice. It teaches you to rule your appetites. It makes your environment honest. It turns pain into policy. It gives mornings a command center. And finally, it introduces you to fidelity until you love it more than you love being liked. Do this long enough, and you will discover the secret the philosophers left like a map under your pillow. You don't need to be watched to be worthy. You only need to be faithful. And fidelity, once it falls in love with you, does not leave. We ended our last journey inside the quiet room where discipline is forged without witnesses. You discovered that when no one is clapping, you still have a reason to keep your word. And when no one is watching, you can still choose the exacting path. Now the room grows quieter still. Not just solitude, silence. No soundtrack to prop up your mood. No scrolling to sedate your nerves. Only breath, heartbeat, and the honest echo of your own thoughts. Most people sprint from this place. They confuse silence with emptiness and emptiness with failure. They don't realize what the Stoics understood. Silence is not the absence of strength. It is the pressure that creates it. If solitude is the gym, silence is the weight. Give me your attention, and I'll show you 14 ways your quiet is changing you right now. Subtle proofs that your hush is not weakness, but weaponry. When we're done, you'll stop fearing the mute button on life and start reaching for it like a craftsman reaching for the tool that never disappoints. You know it's the first sign when your inner voice finally steps out from under the crowd. In noise, your mind is a corridor stuffed with other people's furniture, opinions wedged against the wall, trends blocking the door, last night's gossip leaking under the frame. You navigate by bumping into whatever is loudest. Silence tosses the junk to the curb. At first, what remains is ugly, a loop of old anxieties, an inner critic that only learned one word: less. The temptation is to bolt back to noise where you can outsource identity to applause. Stay. Sit with the voice long enough to hear its lazy patterns. Then start the Stoic work Marcus practiced in private. Rewrite the sentence. Replace helpless speculation with precise observation. Replace catastrophizing with a single next action under your control. Replace insults with instructions. Record it. Reread it tomorrow. Silence doesn't just expose the voice, it gives you the tools to tune it. Weeks pass, and you notice the tone changing. Fewer exclamation points, more periods. Fewer accusations, more directions. Clarity replaces volume. Self-respect replaces self-surveillance. You are not erasing thoughts, you are educating them. And an educated inner voice is a compass you can trust when storms drown out every lighthouse but your own. The second sign appears in your eyes before it appears in your calendar. Perception sharpens. Noise blurs reality, the way a crowded screen blurs text. You squint, then quit. Silence slides the page closer. You notice the rhythm of your breath when a decision tightens your chest. You notice how a colleague says "fine" with a vowel that means not fine. You notice the tiny swerve of your attention toward the easy thing when the important thing turns heavy. The Stoics called this living according to nature, not as a postcard posture, but as a fidelity to what is, unfiltered. You start catching the subtle tells. A habit that always asks for 5 minutes becomes an hour-long heist. A friend who laughs at truth, then calls it too intense, is announcing the ceiling of the friendship. With clearer seeing, your choices simplify. You stop negotiating with patterns that already confessed. You place your effort where reality can repay it. People will call you intuitive. You will know better. It's not mysticism. It's the dividend of listening to a world you finally quieted enough to hear. The third sign is your increased tolerance for discomfort. Silence is a small daily fast from stimulation. At first, the fast feels like famine. You reach for the device the way a hand reaches for a railing in the dark. Then you choose to remove the railing altogether. 10 minutes of quiet sit between you and the world each morning. You hold them the way a lifter holds the bar, steady, present, refusing to drop when the burn arrives. Something shifts. You don't panic when the email pings late. You don't flee a hard paragraph. You don't treat a craving like a command. The nervous system learns a new rule. Urgency isn't oxygen. Epictetus trained students to rehearse adversity so impact wouldn't own them. Silence is your daily rehearsal. You practice staying. You practice breathing under weight. You practice watching the impulse and saying, "Not this time. The world will still swing, but you'll bend where you used to snap, because your quiet taught your spine the difference between pressure and threat." The fourth sign is restraint. Your speech trims itself until your words land like anchors instead of confetti. Much of what we say is a smoke machine. We roll into rooms to obscure our uncertainty. Silence cuts the power. You begin to taste words before you serve them. You replace opinion with observation, gossip with gratitude, self-defense with self-possession. You don't perform detachment. You simply stop giving voice to what you're unwilling to live. In meetings, you wait until you can add structure, not noise. With loved ones, you let pauses carry tenderness that arguments would trample. Silence puts weight plates on your sentences. Brevity lifts them. People listen more not because you demand it, but because you no longer waste what you spend when you speak. The Stoic maxim, better to be silent and thought-wise than to speak and remove doubt, stops being a quote you post and becomes a habit you embody. The fifth sign is that ideas start visiting. Noise is a thief dressed like a friend, always nearby, always helping, always borrowing your focus and never returning it. When you block the doorway with silence, the thief leaves and invitations arrive. You're washing dishes and an outline appears fully clothed. You're walking without headphones and a sentence lands with the certainty of a knock. You're staring at a wall and a strategy steps forward. You failed to find hunched over a keyboard. Creativity is not lightning. It is condensation. Quiet air meets a cooler surface and thoughts bead, visible at last. The Stoics prized contemplation not as daydream but as design. Unrushed thinking that arranges the useful and discards the ornamental. Your notebook fattens, your drafts improve. You no longer beg inspiration, you build a schedule it respects. The sixth sign is sharper boundaries delivered without drama. Silence breaks the addiction to explanation. When you stop filling every gap with words, you stop filling every no with apologetic essays. You discover the clean sentence. That won't work for me. I'm offline evenings. I don't discuss people who aren't here. Threats escalate when truth is timid. Your new tone is gentle and unsurprised. The boundary stands because the foundation stands. Quiet time where you calibrated your values without an audience asking you to bend them. Seneca warned that without first consulting yourself, you will spend your life consulting the crowd. Silence is that consultation. After it, your yes can be generous because your no is real. The seventh sign is that your attention becomes a blade. Silence isn't merely the absence of sound, it's the removal of unscheduled claims on your focus. The mind, unharassed, lengthens its stride. You read the paragraph without retreat. You hold the thread of a problem long enough to knot it. You finish. In a distracted culture, sustained attention is a competitive advantage masquerading as a quaint habit. You discover why Marcus wrote before dawn, not to perform asceticism, but to draft his day while the city slept, protecting the first, best slices of attention for work that deserved them. As your sessions deepen, quantity of time matters less than quality of presence. 90 clean minutes outcompete 9 noisy hours. That ratio becomes your quiet boast, not to others, to yourself. The eighth sign is that your judgments get kinder because your mind is less crowded. Noise puts you in an emotional traffic jam, trapped, irritable, honking at strangers. Silence opens a lane. You catch the moment between stimulus and story. Someone cuts you off conversationally. You do not assign motive. A friend forgets. You do not rename them faithless. You pause as a carpenter pauses to measure before cutting. This is not passivity, it is precision. The Stoics did not distrust feeling. They distrusted fiction, narratives that sprint ahead of facts. Your quiet curbs that sprint. Compassion enters not as a slogan, but as a sober appraisal. What else might be true here? You're easier to be around, not because you're softer, but because you're saner. The ninth sign is that memory, long abused, begins forgiving you. Constant noise smears experience into a single grey streak. Days blur, lessons leak. Silence lets the ink dry. A morning review locks in what yesterday taught. An evening walk stores the day where you can find it. You remember names, phrases, insights that used to evaporate. More important, you remember who you said you were becoming. The weekly drift toward convenience is met by a quiet inventory that says, we don't do that anymore. Memory becomes a guardrail instead of a nostalgic slideshow. You stop relearning the same pain because silence finally gave the lesson a clean page to write itself on. The 10th sign is calibration. Your priorities begin to match your hours. Without quiet, the urgent kidnaps the important. You live by rescue instead of by design. Silence returns the ransom. In the hush, you ask the question that embarrasses self-deception. If someone watched my last 7 days with the sound off, what would they think I value? You look. You adjust. The calendar starts to resemble your mouth. The misalignment between vision and behavior narrows until stress has fewer places to hide. You notice that saying, "I don't have time," was a way to stay innocent. Silence stripped you of that innocence and replaced it with agency. The 11th sign is that you stop broadcasting progress to buy motivation you haven't earned. Silence severs the drip line of cheap dopamine. You do the work and tell no one, not because secrecy is holy, but because integrity matures best in the dark. Seneca advised doing good for its own sake. You are now doing hard things for their own sake. The private glow of a completed session outranks the public glow of a completed post. Results compound. Reputation catches up on its own. The slow way, the right way. You didn't go quiet to become mysterious. You went quiet to become credible. The 12th sign is that endurance replaces intensity as your favorite metric. Noise seduces you into sprints, loud promises, crash diets, all-nighters that impress everyone but your future. Silence introduces you to stamina. You choose repeatable over dramatic, a daily page, a non-negotiable walk, honest food, ordinary bedtimes, the kind of training that will still be possible when life gets messier. To the impatient, this looks like modesty. To the Stoic, it looks like wisdom. When storms visit, and they will, intensity breaks first. Endurance bends, rebuilds, resumes. Your quiet has been teaching you the difference. The 13th sign is that your presence changes the atmosphere of a room without a single word. There is a gravity to people who are not auditioning. Silence cured you of the habit of proving. You now demonstrate. You arrive on time because you decided yesterday. You speak calmly because you met your mind this morning. You don't need to dominate because your work is already speaking somewhere else. The result is paradoxical. The quieter you become, the more clearly you are heard. Not by everyone, only by those who can recognize substance when it doesn't come packaged in spectacle. Those are the people you want, the projects that last, the rooms worth entering. The 14th sign is the most intimate. Peace is no longer a place you visit, but a practice you carry. Not the fragile peace that requires perfect weather, the earned peace that survives imperfect days. You feel it when plans change and you do not. You feel it when a door closes and you don't beg. You feel it when a win arrives and you celebrate without losing your center. The world hasn't grown kinder, you've grown sturdier. Silence braided your attention, your speech, your choices, your stamina, your compassion into something that doesn't snap when pulled. The Stoics didn't chase serenity. They constructed it through repeated fidelity to what they could control. Your quiet has been that construction site. The building is now yours to live in. Take these signs and don't turn them into slogans. Turn them into structure. Keep a daily hush before the world wakes where your inner voice earns its clarity. Guard a weekly hour where perception calibrates and priorities are recast. Welcome small discomforts on purpose, so endurance grows on schedule. Practice one true sentence in every important conversation and let silence do the rest. Do one creative task without sound or screen until ideas remember where to find you. Document lessons so memory can protect you. Decline the post, keep the promise. Choose stamina when intensity seduces. Then enter rooms with nothing to prove because you built proof in private. If you live like this for a season, you will notice the quiet revolutions. The right people will begin to trust you because your words arrive with the weight of someone who listened before speaking. The wrong people will drift because your calm denies them their favorite chaos. Work will deepen because attention finally has a home. And when life gets loud again, as it always does, you won't be at its mercy. You will have a mute button inside, wired by practice, reachable in a breath. Silence is not the absence of life. It is the room where life is tuned. Return to it daily, not to escape the world, but to re-enter it aligned. Speak less to sound wiser. Listen more to become so. Do less to look disciplined. Choose less to stay disciplined. And the next time someone asks how you became so steady, so precise, so difficult to rattle, you won't need many words. You'll smile the way craftsmen smile when asked about their craft and say the simple truth most people are too busy to hear. I practiced being quiet until the noise stopped practicing on me.